Hello and welcome. We are here. We're live at Storyfest, and I want to apologize. We're running a little behind, but technical stuff happens. So here we are. I'm Missy Day, and I am the founder and director of storytelling at What's Your Story. And so after 8 years, we're finally going to, get into the year 2024 and do something virtual.
We're excited.
We're excited. So with me is Michelle and Gerard. So Michelle, go ahead and say good morning.
Good morning. I'm Michelle Hausbeck. I'm a story partner, brand designer, and I am super excited that this is virtual and everybody out there can watch it now, and it will live in infamy on our YouTube channel. And hopefully that's a good thing.
Yeah, so when we have mistakes and everything, no one cares. I don't care.
Yeah.
You just see it forever on YouTube.
Live bloopers, guys. Strap in.
That's really the only way to do live TV. And I'm Gerard Ramallo, by the way. I am the owner of Ramallo Communications and also a big proponent of storytelling. I have been a part of Missy's What's Your Story journey, hosting some of her live events, and now being a part of this live stream. Also taking part in the What's Your Story beta class, which I know you're going to talk a lot more about that coming up later in this broadcast.
Right. So there was been a shift in my business, all for the good, and I'm very excited about it. I'm all in for What's Your Story. So like Gerard said, I'll be talking a little bit more about the Academy, the Speaker Bureau retreats, and this is one part of it, Storyfest. And so another exciting announcement that we have is we have permanently partnered with Compassion International. And they are all about story, and we thought it's a perfect fit for us to partner with them. So you can text. Well, first of all, let me show you. So this is my child that I adopted from Compassion International. I've been sponsoring children for about 12 years. My first child aged out, so now I have, earmuffs, Fred, wherever you are. We have 4 children now that we're sponsoring, because I'll tell you what, you go online and you see these cute little faces, and I like all the sassy looking girls, and so I picked them. And so you have an opportunity today to impact a child's life in El Salvador in a really big way. We're talking about families that live on $2 a day. And so for $43 a month, you can make a significant impact in a child's life in El Salvador. And you can see it now on the screen. You can scan that QR code for information or text Storyfest to 833-933. There's a 3 missing on the end. So it's 833-933. Text that to Storyfest to that number. And you'll get more information, and you too will see all these cute faces that are just waiting to be sponsored. So we're very excited about this opportunity. We'll be talking about that more later as well. But for now, we're going to get started with our show. So Gerard, take it away.
Absolutely. One of the things that we talk about is the power of stories. Stories have the power to connect, to inspire, and to compel us into action. And I think in this day and age where we're leaning into this kind of AI integration and a lot of this kind of fake stuff out there, there's also a real need for authenticity and live storytelling and real stories. And so that's part of why we do what we do here. And we are so excited to introduce our very first speaker. She is a best-selling author, a writing coach, a professional speaker, and minister. Today she's going to talk about stepping out in faith and taking chance, something that I think actually applies to all of us. So please welcome in, and thank you for being with us today, Sophia Falke.
One by one, the elder ladies of my mother's church reached out and touched my arm, said, "You must be the Alaska daughter." It was 1991, and it was my mother's funeral. I was the Alaska daughter because 2 years earlier, I had made a drastic change in my life. And it was transformational, not only for me, but for my mother. I still remember 98, it was November. I was feeling so miserable at my job. The administration had changed. There were new people coming in, and I just didn't belong with the new culture. And I finally, out of desperation, went to my pastor and asked him for some guidance. I don't remember his name, and I do remember he and I didn't get along, but I was so desperate for help. And I remember sitting across the table from him. I mean, my eyes were gushing, my nose was running, I was drooling. It wasn't pretty. And he listened quietly. And finally, I got my composure again and finished my story about my misery, not getting along with people. And he sat quietly for a few moments, and finally he said, "You know, I usually don't give direct advice. I think people have the capacity to figure out what they need to do. But in your case, I'm making an exception. I think you should leave your job." Leave my job! My mind was reeling. And out loud I said, "How can I do that? I don't have any prospects. I have a mortgage. There's nothing that I can think of that I can do other than work." And he chuckled. And he turned behind him and pulled a single sheet of paper out of his file drawer. And he handed it to me. And on it were words that would forever change my life. It's a quotation from Scottish mountaineer W.H. Murray. "Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too." I was reading, and I started to feel shivers running up and down my arms. And I continued reading. "A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance, which no man could have dreamt would have come his way." I felt this sense of release when I read that. And I looked over at the pastor and I said, "You know, that's a big decision. And I think you're right, I should leave my job. But I need to go home and sleep on it." It was 5 o'clock when I left his office, and I did start to head home. But the car seemed to have a mind of its own, and I found myself sitting in the parking lot for my company. And then my feet took over, and I'm walking across the parking lot, in through the front door, into my boss's office. Thankfully, he was still there, working at his desk. "John, can we talk?" He said, "Sure, Sophia. Here, sit down." And he motioned to his little round meeting table. I sat down, he joined me across. I said, "You know, John, I think it's time I move on. I don't think I belong here anymore." He was surprised. He said, "Sophia, are you sure? You're doing a good job. We like you here." And I was going, "No, John, I believe it's time." And I gave him 3 months' notice. So much for thinking about it. Oh, and if you're wondering why I gave 3 months' notice, 3 months took me to being vested in the company's pension plan. I might have been miserable with my work, but I was not stupid. So I walked out feeling lighter, and as I drove home, it was as if this giant weight had been lifted from my shoulders. And then I remembered W.H. Murray's words, until one is committed. Committed. And I thought, wait a minute, maybe I should be committed to a mental institution. I mean, who does that? Who leaves a job with nothing else waiting for them? Obviously, I do. So I went home and started thinking about, well, what would I love? And I think that's a question everyone should ask themselves. What would I love? And I started writing it down. And I ended up with a fairly decent list. And I kept going back to it over and over again. And travel kept coming up to catch my attention each time I looked at the list. Okay, travel's one of my passions. I love going to new places and experience new people and cultures. Okay, travel. Got it. Now, where? And while I was thinking about where I would travel, I happened to meet a woman named Jane. And she and her husband had gone to the wilderness of Alaska, built a cabin from the logs that they made themselves from cutting down trees. They had slaughtered a moose to get them through the Alaska winter. And eventually they did return back to the lower 48. That piqued my interest. Alaska. So I read James Michener's Alaska. And I was hooked. I wanted to experience everything that was in that book. I wanted to see the places where ancient peoples had lived. I wanted to look in the eyes of aged totems, walk on glaciers, see the badger and bear and caribou and moose, without killing the moose, though. And the plan started to formulate, and I thought, I'm going to camp all the way from my home in Tucson, Arizona, to the Arctic Circle in Alaska. That's what I'll do. My mother and I used to speak every Saturday, but I never told her about what I was doing. I was a little concerned about what she would say. And finally, she came to visit me with her annual, I've got to get away from the Albany winter visit after Christmas. As I drove her home, I turned to her and I said, Ma, by the way, when we get home, there's going to be a for sale sign in front of the house. Oh, does that mean you're getting a new place? No, Ma. Actually, I quit my job. Oh, okay. So what's your new job? Well, to tell the truth, I don't have another one, and I decided I'm going to go on a camping trip to the Arctic Circle in Alaska. Now, you know what my mother was going to say. Are you crazy? But before she could get the words out, I stopped her in her tracks. I said, Ma, would you like to come with me? Yeah, my mother loved to travel and see new places just like me. And I knew that her answer would be yes, even though at 75, she had never camped a day in her life. And so our adventure began. Now, at the time, I didn't have an idea of what I would be driving. And I almost didn't ask my mother if she would like to go because I was wondering if she would be able to make it without the comforts of home. Even though I was planning on buying a self-contained camper of some sort. I sold my car before I had made the decision, which was crazy because I had nothing then to drive. But a friend was going to Costa Rica for a month, and she didn't want her daughter using her car, so she said, "Here, take mine." When she came back, another friend had had foot surgery. "I can't drive. Here, take mine." And then my friend Manny finally bought a new vehicle, and he let me use his 10-year-old van until I found my beautiful 3/4-ton GMC pickup truck. It was red. And I bought a used camper that would fit in the bed of the truck. So now I knew what I was going to be traveling in, and I knew my mother could be comfortable. Now the camper had the bed over the cab. That's where I slept. My mother got to sleep in the kitchen area because that collapsed into a very comfortable bed. And we had a 3-burner stove, a refrigerator, a water tank, and best of all, we had a bathroom. And if you have ever traveled to Alaska, you know that having your own traveling bathroom is a good thing. And we had fun before we left. We explored the RV stores for supplies. We read the tour books and started mapping out our route. And what's interesting is the adventure wasn't just Alaska. It was all the people and points in between. We went up into the Southwest. I mean, can you imagine walking into the homes of the ancient Anastasi and then going through Arches National Park and seeing the incredible stone formations and up to the Grand Tetons, the wilderness there and the wildlife, and then into Yellowstone with the geysers. And finally through Glacier National Park, where we saw these turquoise lakes and waterfalls, the glaciers stuck into the mountains, and a blanket of wildflowers. We crossed into Canada and then drove across the Canadian Rockies, and it was amazing. It filled our hearts. When we got to Prince Rupert, British Columbia, we got on the Alaska Ferry that took us up the Inland Passage. We got off at Juneau for a while, and I got to walk on the glacier. And then we took a boat trip and saw the glaciers calving into the ocean. On Sitka, they have massive area filled with totems that they had collected from all over the Pacific Northwest. And I had the opportunity to go through and look into the eyes of the ancient totems. Now, in this case, I had left my mother in the truck because it was too much of a walk for her. And I stayed there for a long time. And I actually met someone from Tucson, and I said, "Oh, when you walk out, would you tell my mother, she's in a red pickup truck, that I'll be out soon?" And when I did emerge, the ranger was just leaving, and he rolled down his window, and he said, "Boy, is your mother angry." He didn't use that word angry, but I won't tell you what he said. And I hollered back, "Yes, I know." And she was worried about me. It wasn't so much that she was angry, she was worried. And when we finally got to, and as we went through the Inland Passage, the delights that I hadn't expected, because we got to watch the whales breaching within feet of the ferry, and orcas following along with us. And then there were the eagles perched high above, looking down on us. When we got off at Skagway, Alaska, we then followed the route of the miners who would go in hopes of riches during the gold rush. Throughout the trip, we kept coming across miracle after miracle. And we'd look at each other and go, do you believe this is happening? And every night, we would sit and wonder. And you know, it's interesting, when we first started out, my mother was a little nervous. And she asked that we only go to campgrounds that had full hookups. That's water, sewer, and electric. And I said, you got it, we'll do that. But as we began to go into the wilderness, my mother started looking more and more for the rustic campgrounds that were away from everything, because the sky was so pure and clear. And at night, it was as if the stars came down to kiss us good night and cover us with a blanket of stardust. We saw our first moose at one of these campgrounds. Our trail took us down through Anchorage, down to the Kenai Peninsula, where, yes, I did get to fish for salmon. Then we went north toward the Arctic Circle. On the way, we went to Denali National Park and saw Mount McKinley, which is now Mount Denali Mountain, and that's the highest mountain in the North America. And it's interesting, Mount Denali makes its own weather. We were there 4 days, and they said you can see the mountain about 25% of the time, otherwise it's shrouded in clouds. And it was true. 3 days we were there. We saw the caribou and moose and bear and badger, this doll sheep. It was amazing. But it wasn't until the last day as we were leaving did we see the mountain. And then up to Fairbanks. Now, to get to the Arctic Circle, you have to go along the haul road that runs along the Alaska pipeline. And my mother was not happy because she was convinced something was going to happen. And she kept trying to get people to talk me out of going up there because it's solid, it's only a dirt road. And there are trucks constantly back and forth. And I was, Ma, you know, if you keep saying something bad's going to happen, it will. And if you don't want to go all the way to the Arctic Circle, it's okay. We'll find you a motel room in Fairbanks. Well, you know she was not going to let her daughter go on that part of the trip alone. So she came. And we did make it to the Arctic Circle. And what was wonderful is standing there and know we had reached our goal. And the only reason I know we had reached our goal is because there was a huge sign that said Arctic Circle. They could have moved that down just north of Fairbanks, and we wouldn't have known the difference. But we were standing there, and I have to admit, even though I know better, I expected there to be a broad yellow line going across the landscape to mark that, yeah, this is the Arctic Circle. On our way back, we were camping at the Yukon River. And I still remember when we went over to the bridge and we watched as the shimmering sun set over the Yukon, setting it ablaze with crimson, indigo, and gold. And that's when we looked at each other and said, you know, This has been so worth it. Yeah, Ma. Let's do it again sometime. For that trip, I did everything backward at the beginning. That whole experience of not having a vehicle for so long, for months I didn't have a vehicle, and my friends coming forward. And when I did buy my truck, I bought it through a broker who went bankrupt just before I got my title. So I couldn't go across the border without a title to get a license. But remember the Murray quote, once one is committed, all manner of unforeseen resources come rushing to you. The people and the resources were there, even though I was doing things backward, and it looked like there was no plan, but there was a passion. You know, we're either pushed by pain or pulled by passion. And our passion was so strong that we were going to make it no matter what. Now, I wish I could tell you more. I don't have time. I just found the journal that I had kept from that trip. And I was amazed at how detailed it was, because I don't like journaling. And people tell me I should write a book about this trip. And I say, no, I can't remember anymore, but my journal remembers. So maybe I do have to write that book. But my question is, what are you passionate about? What is it that you would give up everything and go on an adventure, like my Alaska adventure? And as a friend told me, I have no desire to go to Alaska, but I want some of what you had in an experience for my passion. What is your passion? What is your Alaska adventure?
I want to clap.
Yay!
Virtually, we can clap, right?
Yes. Thank you, Sophia, so much for that beautiful story. It's one of my favorites that she tells. So thank you for coming today and sharing your Alaska story with us.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sophia.
So our next guest is...
Can I call time out and book some travel? I think I want to hit the Arctic Circle right now.
Yeah, she'll
was
take
awesome.
you.
Yeah, definitely. No, that was a lot of fun. It's very inspirational, too.
Yes.
It's a beautiful country up there.
Yes.
It's on my bucket list.
Yeah. Sorry for interrupting.
No
That's
problem.
okay.
Everybody probably knows you anyways. You probably recognize this face. He was on television for a long time.
Oh, thank you. You saying I'm old?
You started really young.
Yes, when you were like
you.
15, he was obsessed with weather. So, Kevin Janison is joining us this morning. So thank you for being
Well,
here.
thanks for having me, Missy. Very nice. I appreciate it.
Yes, it's wonderful having you. So I'm just going to jump right in. So I had the pleasure of meeting Kevin. It's probably been 2-3 months ago, maybe.
Sort of that, I
We
believe.
had
yeah.
great conversation, and I learned that he writes children's books. Where did Deputy Dorkface come from?
These were bedtime stories I told my kids when they were younger. Of course, now that they're in their 20s, they're not asking for a whole lot of bedtime stories anymore. But it was something kind of to transition them from the activities of the day to going to sleep and having some fun. But the stories got to the point where we had some good laughs and they wouldn't go to sleep. And then, of course, I was the one that got in trouble. But we did have a lot of fun with those, and they just kind of evolved from there. And they were very interactive. We're sort of almost improving, where the kids would toss out ideas and we'd mesh that into a story. And eventually we got the first one published, and it did all right. And so the publisher asked for a second one, and we had a couple of other ideas, and it worked out pretty well.
How many do you have now? I see there's a stack right there.
Well, it's a stack of 4. So
Okay.
This was the original one, how Stinkville got cleaned up. This is the story about a town where nobody takes a bath. And what I do is I take things that my kids did, or in some cases still do, that I thought were funny, and then blow them up from there. So when they were young, they were having so much fun. They didn't want to take a bath and go to bed. That meant the day was over. So we had a whole town where nobody took a bath, and the adventures what happened with them. And then we have how Sugaropolis got dessert back. This is the story about a town where the kids are too full for dinner, but they always have room for dessert.
That's right.
That's right. So the deputy bans all sweets. A big food fight breaks out. They have
Wow.
to negotiate healthier eating.
I could not live in that town.
We have kids versus parents for who has the best manners. We have the manners matchup. And then the most recent one, this is fitting for the kids and the adults, how Trutherton got its honesty back. It's a political book because the kids are running for student council, and they're promising to make recess 45 minutes longer. They're promising no more homework. And so then the deputy, what happens in these towns, the deputy kind of overreacts. So in this particular town, he bans all honesty. And so nobody's telling the truth. The teachers aren't telling the truth, the principal's not telling the truth, and they realize at the end that, maybe telling the truth is kind of the right thing to do. So very subtle life lessons with funny, hopefully action-packed adventures, and we've had a lot of fun with these. I've actually done some author presentations in 14 states traveling around. So I've had a blast with something that started out as bedtime stories for my kids.
I love it.
That's amazing. I think the one on manners should be like that could be a nice adult version.
So what's funny about Mannerland? So if I'm at a book festival and the books are out there, the adults always gravitate toward Mannerland. The kids always gravitate toward Sugaropolis. They like dessert, and we have the whole downtown Main Street Sugaropolis. We've got all these great stores and everything. We really have an excellent illustrator.
No
Yeah,
kidding.
that
The
is
illustration
gorgeous.
is amazing.
Yeah, and he does a good job. And so
10,000 flavors.
10,031.
Oh, that 31.
Don't shortchange the other 31.
How do I get here?
There's no yellow brick road, but you have to go to the western region of Switzerland.
Sweet.
Switzerland.
That's where you have to go.
Fun, is it?
Yeah. And the Eldon Doty, who's the illustrator, this is a great story because when I'm in the publisher's office, we're looking at portfolio after portfolio, and most illustrators, with all due respect, because I can't draw, so I am pretty much in awe of their talent. And I'm talking even stick figures I can't do, so that bad. But anyway, you're looking at all of these portfolios, and they all start blending together. And most illustrators, the people kind of look the same. The characters look the same. They might put different ears, different hair, but they generally look the same. Eldon's work was all unique. Plus, he's very funny, and that's why we wanted funny. And so we called his agent in New York City, and they turned us down.
Oh
So
man.
that's my reaction. So we tried again, turned us down, and we were getting under a time crunch and had to move on. So I said, look, let me try one shot calling Eldon without his agent, who works in my business. The worst thing that can happen is he tells me to go, beat it.
Right.
And so, all right, I do a little research. I'm Mr. Big Time National Illustrator with a New York City agent. He lives in Las Vegas.
Oh wow.
So fortunately, he was familiar with some of my other work, and I called him up, went to his house, very nice man, been illustrating a while, left him a copy of the story, and I said, hey, don't read this while I'm here. You don't eat while the chef's in the kitchen. Wait till I'm gone, check it out. You want to be part of it. I would love to have you involved. But if you're too busy, get it, understand. Nice to meet you, and I'm just really impressed with your work. A couple days later, he sent me some sketches, and I'm like, cool. So I forwarded the publisher. Publisher called his agent. They signed a contract, and in 1 week, he did all the illustrations that appeared in Stinkville.
Whoa.
22 of them. But
1
we have to
week.
edit. Yeah, he's good and fast. We did some minor edits and modifications, but yeah, it was and it was kind of and he was fun to work with. We'd bounce ideas off each other, and it's good to have a team. Some people like to be the author and the illustrator, so it's their entire project. But I just believe that if you have another set of eyeballs looking at it, there are some ideas that I might not have thought of that come into play, and then I can rewrite according to some of his thoughts, and I think it makes it a better project.
Oh, yeah.
So the name Dorkface. Tell me about that.
That was just a silly name I made up to make my kids laugh. And every time I'd say Deputy Dorkface, they'd start laughing at his name. Ooh, Dorkface! They'd be laughing at his name. And so again, they'd be laughing at his name and wouldn't go to sleep, but we'd have a lot of fun with that. So that's essentially how it started. we're not calling anybody any names or anything like that. It's just somebody with an unusual name.
Right.
So was the deputy then? Is that you in so many ways?
You think there's a? Do I look like him?
not by resemblance,
Yeah.
but the order.
We had to have somebody in charge, and
Right.
so somebody had to be in charge. And I've had a couple of kids, very smart, actually ask me, how does the deputy get from Stinkville to Sugaropolis? So we never really worked on that bridge. He just happens to show up and moderates these towns wherever he is and settles these issues. Overreacts, but in the end, everybody gets.
So he's like a consultant.
I like that. I don't think the word consultant would work out too well in a children's book, but I do like that.
So what else are you doing these days to keep yourself busy and out of trouble?
I play a lot of tennis. I speak at various functions. I MC events, take naps. I'm a big fan of the afternoon nap, if that works out. And one other thing I do, I actually consult with some lawyers. I believe I should tell Gerard that. And I work on some cases, weather-related cases, and do some expert witness testimony.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So go through that and kind of look at forensic weather, more or less. So a wide variety of things, and basically project-based. I'm very lucky to be in the position I am. This is wood, isn't it?
It is.
All right.
Sure. Sure it is.
Sometimes it's, TV news desks weren't always wood. Knocking on Formica or something.
So when we had the eclipse, so is that something, given your background and everything, do those kind of things, because you traveled
Absolutely.
to see it, right?
Yeah,
So let's talk
absolutely.
about that.
I love those. I mean, how cool is that? First of all, it blows me away that astronomers are able to predict exactly where the moon's shadow is going to be cast on Earth hundreds of years in advance. Our orbits, our position in the universe is so exact, so precise, that we know not only exactly where the shadow is going to be, but how long that shadow is going to last. And it's zipping along at thousands of miles per hour.
Yeah.
So this is my fourth eclipse, 2 totals, 2 annulars. And this one, my wife is from southern Indiana, and so we went there, but I was sweating that out because the forecast wasn't good that week. And I had a plan B in Texas, and their forecast was even worse. Who would have thought that Vermont and Maine would have been the places to go in April? So anyway, it's a very cool, because when it makes first contact, you don't really see any difference in the lighting until you're down to like the last 2 or 3% of the sun still shining. It's incredible how bright the sun is. But it just, as it gets darker, it's sort of like a communal event, because everybody's looking up with the glasses, kind of looking around, seeing how the animals are reacting. It's really cool. It's almost indescribable, but so worth it. So I'm actually making plans now that in August of 2027, in Luxor, Egypt, there's going to be one of the best eclipses of our lifetime, because there'll be over
wow.
6 minutes of totality. So this one was 3 to 4, depending on where you were. And basically, the longer it is, meaning the moon is closer to the Earth. So as the moon gets closer to the Earth, the size is noticeably different. There's a black disk when you're in totality, and it gets a little larger. And it's just kind of cool to look up, because you can take your glasses off during totality and look up and see that and go, man, that is so cool. That's the moon blocking out the sun.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one of those things that if I'm lucky, I'm in a position where I can travel around and see those, because we don't have another one in the U.S. like the one we had a couple of weeks ago. We won't have another one of those until I think it's 2045. And I'd like to be here, but tomorrow's not guaranteed.
Isn't that the truth?
That is the truth. Do you have a favorite weather happening that you that's like your favorite thing to cover when you were doing the weather?
So I'm a big fan of tornadoes.
Okay.
And I'll actually go tornado chasing.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I do. It's, and everybody kind of has the same reaction. Really? you do that?
Yeah.
My
that's
father-in-law
good.
says, well, what are you going to do when you catch one? And the thing is, when we chase, the technology has gotten so good that now we have satellite internet. So we can see where everything is, what direction it's moving, and the idea is to come in from behind. And I'm doing it for photographic reasons. I'm not out there on assignment. I'm doing it because I get some, first of all, watching the conditions and the atmosphere come together like
Yeah.
that is more educational than anything I ever learned in a book. Now, I'm not saying don't go to college by any stretch, but watching this all come together is just absolutely fascinating. So we always chase from behind. Tornadoes will usually move from the southwest to the northeast, occasionally from the northwest to the southeast, but they rarely backtrack to the west. So, and we're in a perfect world a safe distance away. That hasn't always worked out, but we're a safe distance away. And there was one time we were in southwestern Oklahoma, and this really cool wedge tornado drops down probably about 1.5 miles away from us. And we're all doing the weather nerd thing. This is a few years ago, so the selfie was a little hard to do because we didn't have the phones as fancy as they are now. So we're, hey, take it. And plus, we've got nice cameras. So, hey, take my picture. You know, the tornado's back there and all that. And so all of a sudden, this tornado, which was stationary, starts to make a beeline coming right toward us. Now, the only thing that's similar to the movie, Twister, is that we have the multiple vehicles, SUVs, and we run back there tossing tripods and camera equipment as fast as we can. Because this tornado, it's a pretty big one's coming at us. So then we're racing down I-40. We're heading west toward Amarillo. And we're friends with the meteorologist at the NBC station in Amarillo. And he says, you don't want to go down that road. There's baseball-sized hail. We have antennas on the vehicles. We don't want them to get destroyed by baseball-sized hail. So we make a left. We're going down a 2-lane highway. We're getting closer to now northwestern Texas, and we're driving pretty fast. We didn't get any hail, which was great. We get to what we think is the end of the line of storms. We actually see the clearing off in the distance. So we stop to take a visual, just kind of monitor how things are going, get outside. The tornado sirens are going off. Hail is falling in a circular motion, smaller hail, and we look up and the entire sky is spinning. We're right underneath a rotating wall cloud.
Oh my
Sort of the
word.
infancy stage of a tornado. Oh my God. So you could feel, it was really wild, because you could feel the cooler air and then the warmer air. So you have the downdraft coming from the top of the cloud, which is extending 50,000 feet, and then the warm air, which is creating the updraft, which is stretching that cloud out. And so this is the warm, humid air versus the cool air, and it was pulsating. Cool, warm, cool, warm. Hail is falling in a circular motion. Now, obviously, we were very lucky that the tornado didn't touch down where we were, but a couple miles down the road, it did touch down. It wasn't a major hurricane, but it was pretty good size. But what a cool experience that was.
How
Yeah.
cool is that?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend being in that position, but that's one that is just perma-bonded in my brain. My cerebellum will never release that. As far as being out there in the middle of the southern plains watching that.
Man, that's amazing. Well, I have no idea what the time is because the countdown clock isn't working. So I don't know if we've been going for 20 minutes or not.
We have 3 minutes because I was like, I better look at my
Oh,
watch.
good. So we have 3 minutes. So if somebody wants you to come to their party and talk about weather, or come and talk about your children's books or experiences, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, that's a good question. Well, I'm readily available on Facebook. They can call you. They can call Gerard. They can send up smoke signals. I'm pretty good at looking at the sky and answering that. It's pretty easy to find me, track me down, especially in Las Vegas.
All right, good.
Do you have any other books on the horizon, or?
Yeah, I have a couple of other thoughts where the deputy will also overreact that I've
Okay.
outlined. And one of the things I do, so I'll outline the ideas, and when I have enough ideas, then I write it out. I take it to the elementary school near my house, and I test drive the stories on unsuspecting focus groups. I'll do all different grade levels, first,
Very cool.
fifth, fourth, third, and I'll get their reaction. More, I'm looking for, are they laughing when they should be? Are they engaged and really focused when they should be? And I'll also ask them for ideas, what they liked and what they didn't like, and I'll go back and do a rewrite, and I'll come back another month later and do that. So I'm in the initial stages of a couple of other ideas. It's a big process.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, to do a children's book, but it's a lot of fun. It's a passion.
Yeah. Good for you.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think you're fascinating.
Well, that's very nice of you to say. I
too.
appreciate it.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for the applause. You have an applause light going?
I know. I need my little applause button.
All right.
for
Thank
having
you,
me.
Kevin,
My
so
pleasure.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So Thank you, everybody. So I just want to say real quickly, if you've been to Watch Your Story before, this is different. Obviously, we're virtual. We're not on a stage and an audience, but so the format's a little different. So there's a little going back and forth. Have speakers, have people that we interview at the table. So next up, I want to introduce our next speaker. She is a daughter, and she's a wife, and she's a mom, and she's a baker, and she's a realtor, and she's a speaker, and she is certified in the DISC program. And so she's going to share a story here with us for the first time that's very heartfelt to her. Please welcome Stacy Mulligan.
Have you ever gotten a gift that you have just been obsessed over? Maybe when you were a kid, you were thinking about that shiny red bike, and you thought, oh, if I could just get that shiny red bike, I would take care of it. I would polish it every day. I would keep it safe. I would do all the things. My son, Joey, is that gift for me, and I am definitely obsessed, okay? I was obsessed from the moment I knew I was pregnant, which was a few days before I actually took a pregnancy test. I knew because I had been pregnant before, and I had lost my baby in miscarriage. You know, they shouldn't call it miscarriage because it makes it sound like it's your fault, that you miscarried it. But I digress. So Joey was my gift, and from that moment on, I knew he was a gift. And so I did everything that you were supposed to do when you were pregnant. I didn't eat certain things. I did eat certain things. I took care of myself. I was taking care of this gift that I was given from the start. So Joey was born, and again, I was obsessed. I never left him, okay? I don't think I actually left the house without him until he was about 2 years old. Obsessed or very committed or loving? Who knows? Who can say? But my heart was in this child, right? He was my baby. He was my gift from God, and there was no way I was going to let anything happen to her or make it seem like he wasn't the greatest gift I ever got. So I revolved my entire life around him. What did he need? What didn't he need? What should I do? What choices should I make? When he was young, his father and I had been divorced when he was about 1 year old, and I had to figure out a way to work and make money. And how do you do that? This is about 19 years ago. This was before working at home was a thing. So I figured out how to work from home because I wanted to be there with him. I didn't want somebody else to be there for his first walk, his first step, his first word. So I figured it out. And I struggled because there's not a whole lot of money that you can make when you're working at home 18, 19 years ago. But I did what I had to do because I was obsessed with this gift, and there was no way I was going to let it slip through my hands. So my whole life was just a series of decisions based around him. And where should I go? Can I bring him? What will happen if I don't? I would bring him to school every day. I made every decision based around him. Do you see the obsession? Or do you see the commitment? Either way. Turns out it was a little more of an obsession. But here's some examples. I remarried, and now we have a blended family. Joey is 6, and my husband's son, Cody, is 11. So now we have 2 boys. I still make all the decisions around the kids, always. Oh, do you want to go to that movie tonight? No, tomorrow's the first day of school. I want to be there to tuck them in. Tuck them in, 6 and 11. I don't care. Anyway, tuck them in, be there, right? I want to be there. I want to be there to take them. So everything revolved around what's good for Joey, what's good for the kids. And what was good for Stacy was not even a question. I was a mother. The end. That was my job. So years and years go by, of course. So now my son is 20. But last year, he was 19, and he was sort of figuring things out. So this was right after COVID and the lockdown, and so he had missed his sophomore and junior year of high school to go, in person, to actually attend high school. So, he was feeling a little lost. He went back in his senior year. It was a huge joke. He went for like 3 hours. I don't even know why they bother. But he graduated, and he wasn't sure what to do. So finally he said, you know what? I think I'm going to go to Colorado we're in Las Vegas. I'm going to go to Colorado and sell something door to door. And I said, I think that's the best idea you've ever had. And in my heart, I thought, whew, Colorado is really far. What am I going to do? But my job was to prepare him for the world. So I said, this is a great idea. I think this is the best idea you've ever had. Better than trying to learn this or going to college. This is real life, and you're going to learn, and you're going to come back a new man. And so, of course, God's timing is God's timing. And I think sometimes he has a sense of humor, or he's a little mean. However you want to look at it. But I turned 50 that year in January, and my husband wanted to take me to my favorite place in the whole world, Maui. It's true paradise for me, and I loved it the last time we went. So he had planned this trip for April. He gave it to me in January, and we were planning to go in April. Everything was done, paid for, locked down. I was excited. And approximately 2 weeks before our trip, that's when Joey said to me, I think I'm going to go to Denver for the summer and sell door to door. And I said, okay, great. And I'm thinking, okay, when do you need to go? When is everyone going? And of course, he's 18, he's 19, he's getting answers from other 19-year-olds. Nobody knows the answer. When will you go? Nobody knew. So, turns out, right before we were leaving for Maui, he said, I have to leave on Sunday, on Saturday morning, and we were coming back on Sunday. Yeah, he was going to leave while I was gone. And I thought, well, I won't go. I've been there every day for him, every single day. And how could I not be there for him when he's leaving to live his life? So I contemplated, and I thought, what will happen if I don't go to Maui? And then I can be here and say goodbye to him at the door and hug him and be there. And I thought, okay, I do need to go. I need to go. I said, but I can't go unless I know that somebody who loves him as much as me will be there to say goodbye to him, at 3 o'clock in the morning when he gets on the road. So I asked my mom to stay over, and she did. So she was going to stay over the night before he was going to leave. So he didn't leave an empty house. The dogs weren't even there. So, the night before we left for Maui, which should have been a very exciting night for me, was one of the worst nights of my life. And I waited for him to come home so I could give him a proper hug, a hug goodbye. Who knows how long he would be gone? Who knows if he was going to stay? And he didn't come home until really late in our flight. We had to get up at like 4:30 in the morning, and I waited around until about 12, and I thought, I need to sleep, or at least need to try. And I guess maybe deep down he didn't come home on purpose because maybe he couldn't say goodbye to me either. So I wrote him a nice note, a note we'll call it. I started the beginning of a notebook, and I wrote him all the things I felt in my heart for him and how I wanted him to do well, and that I had every bit of faith in him that he would succeed. And I wanted him to take that with him so that when he maybe was scared or sad or lonely, he could read that and know that I loved him and that I believed in him. So I got up after I had been woken up crying all night long. Let me tell you that I'm not a crier. First of all, okay, I've cried when things are sad. I've cried if somebody dies. I've cried, in a breakup. But I didn't cry long, I cry a little and then my body's like, well, that's it. 15 minutes, that's enough. You're done. The tears dry up and I'm finished. I have no control, it's just done. So that's all the crying. This is important because what I'm about to tell you, you're going to say, wow, well, how does that happen? Is that possible? I'm going to tell you, yes, it is. So I cried from approximately 12:30 at night, that night, all through the night. I would wake up crying if I slept at all. I woke up crying. I went upstairs crying. I hugged him crying. I got in the Uber crying. A different kind of cry, not that, crying, but just tears. Just tears were coming down my face, and I had no control over it. So we get in the Uber. I'm crying in the Uber in the back seat with my husband, and my husband's looking at me thinking, are you all right? And I said, and put my head down, and just tears coming out like a faucet, just coming out. We get to the airport, we check in, we go through TSA, tears, I'm crying. They probably thought I was being abducted. They probably were like, what's going on with this woman? Why is she just crying? Cried all the way through the gate, through Terminal 3. All the way to sit down to go to Maui. He stopped to get some coffee at Starbucks. I was crying. I went into the bathroom, stopped crying for 1 second. I thought, well, let me put some makeup on. Yeah, that was a good idea. So I put some makeup on, and that way there was something else to go down my face while I was crying continuously. So we get on the plane, crying. Sitting on the plane, crying. I was wearing a hoodie. I put it over my head at one point, and I just kind of put my head down so that people wouldn't see me, because people are looking at me like, what is wrong with her? Crying. The flight to Hawaii, to Maui, is about 6 hours long. I had been at the airport for a couple hours. We were up for a couple hours, so I cried for approximately 10 hours straight. And at some point, my husband, because he's worried, he's like, what's wrong with her? And probably he's thinking, well, this is the worst vacation ever. What's happening? I'm taking her to the most spectacular place, the place she loves, and is this how our next 8 days are going to be? And he'd put his hand on my back. And of course, when someone loves you and you're upset and they hug you or embrace you or look at you, it just turns it all on. And so he touched me. And then I was really crying. And he's thinking, I just wanted to, the poor guy, I feel so bad for him. I can't even imagine what he was thinking. So then he did that. He touched me. The tears all come out. I have to get up now and try to pull myself together yet again. Pull myself together, come back, not crying, take one look at him, crying. All the while I'm thinking, I'm crying because Joey's leaving. And I'm crying for a lot of reasons, but I didn't really know why. So we finally get there, and I try to pull it together and realize, okay, I'm here. Nothing I can do now. I need to enjoy, and I need to let Joey do what he's going to do. So 5 days, I had a decent time in Maui. How ridiculous to say. I tried to enjoy, and then came the day where he was going to leave without me. And I watched him on the Ring doorbell in the middle of the night, walking out with his stuff, carrying his stuff, his friends. By the way, he's never driven on a highway before. He didn't like it, and now he's going to drive with his, equally young, inexperienced friend to Denver, Colorado. I wasn't worried. I was in paradise. Yeah. So I watched him on the Ring doorbell, cried, and then the tears started again, and my poor husband's thinking, oh no, here we go. This is how we're going to end the trip. We start the trip with a 12-hour crying spree. We're going to end it the same way. What's wrong with my poor wife? And I can't fix her. What can I do? So he leaves. My mom hugs him at the door. He cries. I cry. I watch it over and over again because, why wouldn't I do that to myself? So the next day, we get home. He arrives safely. I'm at the edge of my seat all day wondering where he is. I'm watching him on Life 360 as the little car moves, and I'm thinking, oh my God, 96 miles an hour, that's too fast, don't go that fast. He finally gets there, and we come home the next night. And it's always sad to leave Maui, but this time it was really sad because now, when I went home, he wasn't going to be there. And I remember the day that he left, I called my mom, and I was in a panic, and I said, wait, don't clean his room. Don't touch anything. Don't wash his sheets. And she was like, I was going to. And I said, yeah, please don't. And I needed to smell him. I needed to smell what he smelled like. And so we got home. It was midnight. We traveled all day. It's terrible to travel, right? You get home at midnight. You wait at the airport for an hour for your luggage. It's awful. So we got home. It's dark. We open the door, and I know that he's not there. And I go upstairs to his room and I take off his pillowcase and I smell it and I hold it and I go back downstairs and go to bed. So the next day I get up and I go in the backyard and I'm sitting there trying to have some peace and figure out what does all this mean and what does this mean for my life now, and is he going to be okay and all the things. And I remember that I had been watching this bird make a nest for weeks, and it was so fascinating to watch. And so they're making this nest in this little tree we have in the backyard and working hard, and I hadn't thought anything of it. But a couple days later, after coming home to my empty nest, the baby bird was born. The baby bird hatched. And now I didn't have an empty nest anymore. So now I watched this little bird and thought, okay, this is my Joey. He's here. He's here with me. There's another baby bird. And I tell you this story not because it's sad that my son left, as I had prepared him for everything that was to come. I was ready to release him. I mean, in my heart, of course, I want to hold on to him, but I truly love him, and so I want him to succeed, and I need to let him go. And I was ready. But what I didn't know was what it meant for me. Who am I now if I'm not Joey's mom full time? I had been Joey's mom for 20 years, nonstop. I was like pushed into retirement. And although I wanted to be in retirement, I was forced with some questions about, well, who are you? And I didn't know. And I found myself lost. And I didn't even know I was lost. I was just dropped into this space where I was no longer the person that I was, right? I no longer had that identity, and that left me with nothing. So I had to figure some things out, and it was really difficult to look in the mirror and say, if you're not Joey's mom, who are you? And I had no answers to that question, none at all, nothing. And so I was lost and alone and sad, and I was sad for him not being there, but mostly I think I was sad for the person that I didn't even know anymore. I had no idea who I was, what I was capable of, what my value was if I wasn't Joey's mom. So if you've been in a space where you've been doing something for so long and your identity is in whatever you're most committed to. I read that somewhere the other day. And that's so true, because if you're the greatest at your job and you're the most committed to it, that's your identity. So when people ask you, oh, what do you do? Who are you? You say, oh, I'm a realtor, or I'm a mother, or I'm a, instructor for yoga. That's who I am. But it turns out that it's not who you are. And it's very scary to try to figure out who you really are. But you will figure out who you are. And my hope is that you ask some of these questions before you're put in the position of getting fired from the one thing that you've done forever. And that you have an idea of who you are and how you want to spread your wings and how you're going to make a difference, and that your life didn't end because that portion ended. So you usually need to give up who you were to become who you are. And I've learned in the last year or so that who I am is not even close to who I thought I was, and that I'm so much more than just Joey's mom. Don't get me wrong, I'm the best at being Joey's mom, and he agrees. But I'm still Joey's mom, but that's not all I am. And so stay true to yourself and understand that if you're going through something, that you've had a loss, that there's something on the other side that's so much better that maybe you didn't even imagine. And I promise you, it's there. Just look.
Yay! Thank you, Stacy Mulligan, for sharing your heart today. We appreciate it. Glad you were here.
That was a great first time I've heard that one.
It was good.
People ask us
Yeah.
all the time what makes a good story, and we talk about authenticity, but I think also vulnerability, because that's where you get the deep, the real, and that's your opportunity to connect.
Right.
When you can be vulnerable yourself, whoever's listening in the audience is saying, you know what, I've gone through something like that, or I can relate to that experience. And so I'm just curious, what do you guys say when somebody says, what makes a good story? What do you tell them?
That I think that then it's the connection part. Like it could empty nest. She's talking about her son, but empty nests can have so many meanings to it, right? Your spouse has left, you or died, and there's so many situations where we need to share those, like you're saying, vulnerable moments. Because we want to give hope to people, right? That just because you're in it right now doesn't mean you're going to stay in that forever.
Yeah, it is. It's the transparency, the vulnerability, and it's the being honest with yourself, which allows you to be honest with the audience. I really like that message. Stacy felt like her identity had been stripped away,
Yeah.
but which I think we can all, like you were saying, identify with. But we are so much more than just what we do, whether it is a parent, a job, a sister, a mother, a brother, whatever it is. There's a lot to us.
I also like that it's sort of unscripted. She could get up and give the same story again, but it'd probably be completely, or at least largely,
Somewhat different. Mhm.
different. When a story starts to sound scripted or too rehearsed, that's when you risk a disconnect, I think, with your audience. So kudos to Stacy and so far all of the speakers that we've heard from today.
So I have a question for you. So she's talking about identity, right? And sometimes we use our jobs as our identity. Well, I work that's who I am, like she was saying. So you were in journalism for a long time.
Right.
And at a news anchor desk, And so when you left that, did you have some kind of like, oh my gosh, who am I now?
Absolutely. And I think anyone who goes through a transition, and when we're talking about a career change, if you've done something for 20 or 30 years and then suddenly you're not doing it anymore, there's definitely an emotional, transition. There's a lot that goes through your mind. Absolutely. You do have a period where you're kind of wondering, oh, what am I doing next? Especially if you weren't planning for it. But what I've learned is that throughout that 30 years, I may not be doing the same career now, but I did establish a skill set, and I did learn quite a bit, and I did have a lot of experience. And so you pivot, right? And you take those experiences, you take that skill set, and you put it into something else. And just as Stacy was saying, you don't know what's on the other side.
Right.
You don't always know what's on the other side. It could be better than what you thought you experienced. And frankly, that's kind of what I'm experiencing right now. I'm enjoying this kind of whole new area of my life, but I'm still drawing on that skill set that I established over the course of 30 years.
So why don't you just share, like, really quickly, like, so what are you into these days? Are you speaking,
So
maybe?
yes, absolutely. I in a nutshell, for that 30-year period, working as a reporter and working as a news anchor and a journalist, I spent much of that time telling other people's stories. Because you go out and you interview people, you share their stories, and then you put it on the air, and you try to make it interesting in a 1-minute time frame, which was very, very constricting and challenging sometimes. I can tell you many people that I met and had to interview, and then my producer says, okay, you've got a minute and 10 seconds to tell this incredible story about a Holocaust survivor or some incredible, it's an impossible task,
Yeah.
right? So I'm glad to be freed from those constraints now. But as for what I'm doing now, I am a public speaker now. I go out and tell my own experiences, which is also really, really rewarding. And I also help people as a consultant and a coach and kind of help them and coach them on how to tell their own stories. Because a lot of us, we all have stories. Everyone has a story, but a lot of people don't know how to share their stories. They don't realize, or they don't think that their story has value. What Stacy just shared with us, very personal, very, very vulnerable moment, and yet I think people on the receiving end are hearing her story and saying, you know what, that applies to me. And I didn't realize there was something on the other end. And there absolutely is. So
Right.
that's where I'm leaning right now. I work with some nonprofits. I love the idea of going out and public speaking, and that's what I'm doing. That to me is the most fulfilling part of what I do right now, and also the coaching and consulting area. You know, people, I think, are starting to recognize the power of story and the fact that they need to learn how to deliver their stories if they want to be effective.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Are we ready to go to our guest in the UK?
She's there.
All right.
Awesome.
We're an international operation, by the way.
We are
we not?
international. I have
Yeah.
to say, we've just taken it up to a whole new level. So I'll leave it up to you. Do you want to introduce Rhonda?
Yes. So Rhonda, and I love her description. She's a self-described digital nomad. Okay, and if we're going to be living in the digital age, why not have a digital nomad? She offers international co-working experiences, and I think this is so important and so now because we are a part of this international culture, and you want to be able to work with people across the world. I have a client, someone that I work with who is in fact in London. She lives in Oxford, so I know what this is like. You are in London, if I'm not mistaken, Rhonda?
It's actually in Stroud.
In Stroud. Okay, so I believe you're 8 hours ahead of us. So it's later in the day. It's in the
Yep.
evening hours there. But you offer encouraging words for especially women who are seeking adventure. So it is our pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Rhonda Taylor, all the way from Stroud, England. And we are so glad that you are joining us today.
Rhonda Taylor coming to us from Stroud, and we have lost her audio, unfortunately. So
We'll try to get back to her, if we can reestablish that connection. But this is, and I'm very, very familiar with this kind of scenario. This is part of what happens in a live broadcast. Occasionally, there's
have that a few times yourself.
oh
did you?
my gosh, I have
On the
had
fly.
I have had times where I am speaking very confidently into the camera and I am not on air, and I've had other times where I have no idea that I'm on air. And the camera's on me and rolling, and I'm talking about things that I probably shouldn't be talking about. So
People have been known to get in trouble
yes,
doing that.
anyone who's ever
Hot
worked
mic.
in TV.
Yeah.
So we'll try to get back to Rhonda here shortly, and hopefully we
All
can
right.
reestablish that connection.
So we are ready for our, yes, please, bring in Kim.
I'll give a little background on our next speaker while we're waiting for her to
Wonderful.
come in. Kim Snyder was, and I met her because she was part of our beta speaking class, our What's Your Story speaking class. And I loved Kim because she wasn't even sure she wanted to do this initially. And I remember she even said, well, this isn't for me at one point. But then she came back and she said, well, maybe this is for me. Maybe I can be a speaker. And I loved her approach. There's an authenticity about Kim for sure. She talks about being a professional traveler, at first not by choice, because she was a kid and she traveled a lot. And then over time, she became a professional traveler and a traveling consultant. And I think that is such a unique position to be in. But she's also become a speaker. And, when you travel, you are changing locations and you're changing your area code and your zone so often that you are forced to learn how to accept change. Ironically, Kim now speaks about change. So we are very thrilled to have Kim Snyder with us here today. Professional traveler, talks about embracing change and about the importance of how to adapt when you have to evolve and change. So please welcome our next speaker, Kim Snyder.
Yay!
Can you clap for yourself? Yes. Perfect. Thank you for the introduction. And change for me was kicking and screaming. A fun fact is I have a suitcase packed at all times. And no, it's not a go bag. It is a I'm always ready to go bag. And my first suitcase that I started packing by myself was when I was 7 years old. It was. Up until that point, I was setting out my clothes on the bed, and we were taking a month-long trip, and I would put my clothes on the bed, and I would ensure that I had the right number of items. And so I remember my mom helping me about, okay, we're going to be gone for 10 days. You have 20 pairs of shorts. Do you think that's going to work? And it evolved to me getting my own suitcase. And the reason I had my own suitcase is because we were taking road trips every year as a family, 2 really, 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 really long road trips. And I got my own suitcase, and this was back when they were heavy and no wheels. And the reason we were driving on all of these road trips is because my dad didn't fly. I didn't know that when I was younger, but I found out later on when I was able to comprehend that is that my dad was in a plane crash. And that's why we did road trips. I remember my dad talking about his crash when I asked him, and he said, it was my last day at this development where I had flown to Northern California. And I didn't like to fly, so I knew every time we took off, we were off of the runway by a certain point, except for that day. He said, at that day, I knew we were going over the cliff. In Northern California, the beaches are typically over the cliff. They're not nice and sunsetty and walking out in level like they are in Southern California. And so when my dad was telling me this story, he said he turned to his buddy next to him and said, we're going over the cliff. Put your head between your legs. So I don't know how many of the other 24 people on the plane did that, but they went over the cliff. My dad was one of 7 that survived. The change that my dad had impacted me. It obviously impacted him. My dad has still not been on a flight since then. My brother and I asked him, at what point would you fly? If I was overseas, would you come visit me? He still doesn't give us an answer. What my dad has said, though, and what he's done because of that change in his life, is he's given us the opportunity to take road trips. So we didn't stop traveling. We just saw travel from a different perspective. Every year, we would go on 2 road trips with my suitcase. And it was for at least 2 to 4 weeks. We would visit family in Arkansas and Canada. Those are 1,500-mile trips one way. That is about 3 days of driving, 8 to 10 hours each. In a car, 6x6, with me, the amazing big sister, and my little bratty brother. But you get to know each other really well on those road trips, right? I mean, you talk about when you live with somebody, how about a road trip for 3 days? You sleep and you eat and you drink and you argue and you yell and you do other things in there. And this was before iPads and iPhones. So, I enjoy to read. And one of my loves of reading came from those road trips. I still like road trips. We learn to see the ground. We learn to see the country from the ground. And there's nothing like stopping at a roadside truck stop or a road, the rest stops, or stopping at a local store or restaurant to use their facilities, walk around and see what's native to that area, and it's amazing, and to talk to the people. Like, I will never forget that, and I love that, and I still carry that today. My dad's love of travel took him to other adventures for his work. Again, he never flew. He shared that with us. I continued those road trips throughout high school with my family. As an adult-ish in college, I did road trips as well. We would often drive back from places that I was going to school with my friends or people that lived in the area to visit family. and those were usually about a day road trip. I did fly a couple times. My father never talked about flying as fearful for him, and he never put that on me. Which is good, because when I picked my next career, or my first career, it involved flying, but I didn't realize it at the time. After I graduated school, or actually right before I graduated school, I was working for a small company. And we were in there, and the owners had brought in a consultant to help fix their business and work on their business, and I had no idea what the heck that was. It just sounded really cool, and it looked really cool. And I said, I want to do that. I want to be a consultant. Thank goodness nobody asked me really what it was, because I just saw that picture, and that was the picture that I wanted to do, which was go in and fix a business. I don't even remember what he fixed in the business, but I wanted to do that. And so when I went to college, I said, I'm going to immerse myself in college and attend everything I can and just be exposed to whatever is out there. And one of the first places I went to was a career fair. Even though I was a freshman, I still had 4 years to figure out what I wanted to do. And lo and behold, there were some consulting companies there. And they probably wanted to get rid of me, because I asked every question. What is it like? How does it work? What is your day like? Who do you talk to? What do you help them fix? And then I continued the conversation on and did research. I was going to be a consultant. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I was going to be a consultant. Again, I didn't know what I was going to fix, but I was going to fix something in business. And when I graduated, I didn't get a job in consulting. I had a desk job for a bit. My second job was consulting. I finally figured out how to get there, because I wasn't qualified. I didn't have what I needed to be a consultant, or I didn't interview well, or they didn't like me. Anyways, it didn't work out till my second job. I was so happy. I remember sitting in the plane, flying from San Diego at that time to New York to go visit the company. And I'm sitting on the plane, and the first hour in, we're hitting turbulence. This is not going to be fun. I'm looking at the gentleman next to me, and he's just reading his paper. Doesn't even notice the plane's bumping. And I thought, okay, maybe I don't need to worry. Maybe I'm jumping up at my seat. I don't know. I just didn't like the turbulence. So we keep going along, and we did a couple little bumps. And I looked at the gentleman. He didn't even move. And I finally said, I looked at him, and I was gripping the handrails or the seat, and I said, aren't you afraid of the turbulence? Aren't you afraid? Folds his paper down. What turbulence? Okay, this is going to be a long trip. We were in hour 1 of hour 6. Thank goodness the turbulence subsided, because I thought, wow, here I am on the way to my dream job, and now I have to deal with flying. I wanted this big change in my life, and I didn't realize that the change meant I would have to hop on a plane every week, because I didn't think the next step beyond my job. I didn't think, oh, well, if I have to work on a business, San Diego's not really the mecca for businesses. So I probably need to fly other places. Didn't think that far. All I knew is I wanted to fix businesses and help them. And so I had to learn that even though you may or may not want change in your life, you've got to figure out a way to either accept it or adapt. And that really was the start of me for consulting for 30 plus years, which meant I traveled almost every week to 1 to 3 cities every week. And by the way, I had a new suitcase, so it wasn't the same old crappy one. So traveling to a city every week was amazing. It reminded me of the road trips that we used to do as a kid, right? So I was just in the air. So every time I would land at a city, I would get in a car and I'd go drive around and I'd check out the areas. I wanted to see what the area was like, just like I did in a kid, right? Check on the rest stops, I'd check on the truck stops, I'd check on the restaurants, the stores, anything that I could that was open when I got in, to make sure that I was like, okay, I like this area. I wanted to see what the area is about. I didn't want to just show up and work. I wanted to immerse myself. As I progressed through my career, I ended up changing roles. So even though I traveled every week, I wasn't traveling to the same place. Or I was traveling to the same place. So there was some familiarity. at least in the places. So I couldn't show up every week and show up to the same truck stop and restaurants because then they would think I was creepy. So I had to change what I was doing. What I would do is when I would show up to a client, I would help them embrace new software. And some people have been at this company for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 20, 30 years. And we were helping them embrace new software that would make their life better, though they didn't see that at the time. There was a lot of pushback, right? When you change somebody's day-to-day in their life, they want to know why, and what does it mean, and how come, and why can't we stay? And so I chose to focus on what it was going to give them rather than what it didn't. And I remember sitting down with a couple of folks at a client site, and they were starting to get a little frustrated because when they logged into the software that morning, they said, well, everything's changed. I said, of course it's changed. It's cloud software. They're going to move things around as they see fit, and they build new functionalities, and they want to show you what this means for you. Well, that's just not right. I want to have it the same way, and the training document's wrong, and now my process is wrong, and how am I supposed to learn when it changes? And I said, well, do you have Netflix? Yes. Do you have online banking? Yes. Well, doesn't that change? Well, yes. Well, so now the stuff in work is going to change. Not necessarily big processes, but when you log in, it's going to look different just like it does for Netflix. Oh, okay. They weren't equating that the changes that they were having in their personal life was also happening in their business life. And quite honestly, neither was I. We all do that, right? There's stages where we do really well in one area and one not so well in the other area. Case in point for me. I had to travel every week, which means that I would drive to the airport, park in my favorite spot, go walk to the gate and sit in my favorite spot. Well, if somebody was in my favorite parking spot, I was getting a little pissy. How dare them? That's my spot. Don't they know that? Yes, in an airport, I know. You know, it'd get me a little snarky. Then if somebody was in my favorite seat at the airport, I was a little frustrated. And one day I caught myself and I said, well, if I can't accept the changes in my personal life, but I can in business, I'm not much better than the people that I'm helping. They can't accept the changes in their business life, but they can in their personal life. So I started having to figure out how to adjust and adapt to that change. And not only in those areas I noticed, but there was other areas in my life. Other areas with relationships. On the personal side, the business side, it was easy for me. The personal side, it wasn't. And so I had to take a deep look and look at some of those areas. And I don't know if you guys can relate to that, you know, as you start to think about this. One of the areas a lot of people can relate to is when I talk about the parking spots. And usually when I tell this, everybody says, oh my gosh, I went to my favorite parking spot and it was taken and now I'm okay. Well, the technique that I used, and that somebody said to me, I actually like the technique somebody shared with me that was so much better. They said, I get to work on my favorite Pilates machine. You get to, not that you can't. So whether it's your favorite Pilates machine or your favorite parking spot or your favorite table, your favorite server, your favorite desk at your office or your co-working space, if they're not taken, or even your favorite seat at church, doesn't matter where it is. I learned that having the get to as opposed to I can't attitude really helped me adapt to the change. The other area that I had to learn is when you travel every week, it changes your life completely. You don't get to do the normal things that you get to do at home. Didn't get to do happy hour, go to the grocery store, walk the pet, take out the trash. Well, some of it I probably didn't want to do, but yeah. But your life changes. And so I had no idea when I accepted consulting as a job that it was going to have such an impact on my life. I had to change my day-to-day, my week-to-week. I had to figure out how I was going to pack efficiently. I had to figure out how I was going to manage my household efficiently. Because I didn't want to come home. I was only home 2 days a week. I didn't want to come home and spend it on mundane activities. I had to adapt and figure out what that new life for me was going to be like. And as I did, every time I took it, again, my goal was I was going to be a consultant to be happy. How do I make this work? What do I get to do? Not what do I have to do? One question I'm often asked is, how did you pack? I do have a suitcase that's packed that literally I can go grab 2 pants, 4 tops, and a pair of shoes, and I can be out the door in 5 minutes. I have a black wardrobe, I have a blue wardrobe, and I have a brown wardrobe. And sometimes when it was busy, you could actually see them on the floor because I was too busy to do them. You have to find ways to adapt. Change is happening and it's constant. What I'd like to share with you in my last few thoughts here is that I saw a recent study that said in 5 years, 84% of us, our lives will change and look differently. So if you think back right now, 4 years, how different does your life look right now? And what is it going to look like going forward? So for me, I call my suitcase my change ready bag because it means when I show up, whether I want it or not, change is going to happen. And I get to handle that change, and I hope you get your change ready bag too, so you can handle that.
Yay!
Yay.
Very
Thank
nice.
you, Kim. Well
Very
done.
nice.
Great.
Thank you. Am I still on camera?
No.
But you're still being celebrated. Thank
You
you.
are.
Thank you so much. I love especially, you know, the mindset element of her presentation really can apply to all of us. I like to say a similar phrase that I have a get-to job as opposed to a go-to job. And I think if we can arrive at that point, then we're able to do, you know, more good. And we're able to have a lot more satisfaction if we can get to that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Well done, Kim Snyder.
Yeah, very nice. I remember
you.
when
Of
you
course.
didn't think you wanted to be a speaker, and now here you are. So very nice. Absolutely.
Well, we are ready to go back to Rhonda.
I
Yes,
think
we
we've
have her back.
reestablished, I should say, our digital connection. We're
Yep.
going to go back to our digital nomad, Rhonda Taylor, joining us from Stroud, England, and hopefully audio and video and everything else is working. But Rhonda, thank you once again for joining us at Storyfest.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can
Yes.
hear you. I don't know if you
Yes.
can hear us.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, yes, I heard you the last time. So, okay.
And now we can
Round
hear you.
2. That's great. Have you ever stood at the edge of a precipice, your heart pounding as you contemplated a leap into the unknown? What if I told you that taking that leap could be the most liberating decision of your life? Today, I stand before you not just to tell a story, but to share a journey, a transformation that began with a single daunting decision made in the heart of midlife. My intuition had been talking to me since 2008. I had designed a book for a woman who had taken an entire year off while volunteering around the world. I had no idea this concept existed. And from there, the seed was planted. However, over the years, I had created obstacles for myself. I wondered, how could I save the money? Maybe I should get sponsors. And wondered what the entire plan would look like. I was uncertain about how it would work. And I believed that I needed all the answers before I could embark on my journey. Finally, after 8 long years, I brought all of these obstacles to my mastermind group. I was seeking clarity, direction, solutions, anything they could offer. One person, a dear friend, asked me a single question that changed everything. With patience and love in her eyes, she asked, Rhonda, what would it look like if you just bought a one-way ticket and figured it out from there? I was both excited and terrified to hear this. I had to ask myself, how bad do you really want it? Because suddenly all the obstacles that I had created were removed. I was stunned. I'm sitting at the table wondering if it could really be this easy. I I lost my train of thought. And guess what? 2 weeks later, I bought a ticket. And within 39 days, I was on a plane to Costa Rica. Little did I know that one decision would be the catalyst for a complete life transformation. You see, I didn't just buy a ticket to a new destination. I also bought a chance to rewrite my story. It was a chance to discover new things about myself, to push my limits, and to step outside of my comfort zone. Now, make no mistake, it was scary at first, but the excitement of the unknown was exhilarating. Looking back, I realized that taking that chance was the best thing I ever did. It opened up a whole new world of possibilities and gave me the freedom to create a life that I truly love. Embracing change wasn't exactly easy for me. The initial days were full of chaos. I had to face language barriers and cultural differences on a daily basis. I can still recall when I first arrived at the bus station in Costa Rica. I'm holding a ticket to Nicaragua, but unable to communicate effectively in Spanish. I spoke zero Spanish. I felt lost and helpless until a kind local approached me and showed me the power of kindness that transcends all language barriers. Thanks to his help, I was able to board the correct bus at the right time and reach my destination safely. He was like my guardian angel that day. And I have been blessed with many other angels since then. They always seem to show up when I need them the most. Being flexible and adaptable has become my new routine, and I've learned to be resilient in the face of challenges. Each new country carved out a new chapter of self discovery. The tough situations I encountered, like getting attacked by scorpions in the Nicaraguan jungle, or getting caught in a sudden storm on the Caribbean Sea while traveling to Colombia on a really small boat, or facing internet issues while working in the remote mountains of Peru. This all taught me the value of patience, humility, and the incredible strength of the human spirit. My travels across 20 countries and 3 continents so far have enriched me with profound friendships, stunning vistas in Peru, and heart racing adventures in Colombia. But above all, it has granted me invaluable gifts of self awareness and a deeper understanding of what truly matters. As I journeyed, I connected deeply with local communities, dedicating myself to meaningful volunteer work. Whether I was cooking for struggling single mothers in Colombia, digging trenches with a pickaxe in the Nicaraguan jungle, or walking shelter dogs in Mexico, each experience enriched my understanding of diverse cultures and allowed me to give back, leaving a lasting impact in every place I briefly called home. Traveling solo around the world has done more than test my survival skills. It has revealed the essence of my independence. I learned that the world is a kind place and that I could be my own home anywhere, regardless of longitude and latitude. For those contemplating this or a similar leap, know this. Age and convention are constructs, not constraints. Life's boundaries are meant to be tested, pushed, and broken. I am living proof of the amazing things that can happen when we overcome our fears. Leaping into the unknown, especially in midlife, is not only about changing our physical location, it's also about transforming ourselves within. So I leave you with this question. What leap is waiting for you? And what wonders might it bring into your life? Thank you.
Yay! Thank you, Rhonda Taylor. She's in this beautiful fairy tale looking village in England, pet sitting this cute little dog. And so, if you want to see where she is and what she's been up to in her digital nomad lifestyle, you can find her on Instagram under Rhonda Taylor. And she's just in a beautiful place. And from there, she's going on to Ireland, and then she's going to Scotland. And so follow Rhonda. She has an amazing story, as you just heard. And thank you, Rhonda, for joining us at Storyfest. And so right now, so a lot of these events wouldn't be able to take place if we didn't have sponsors. And our story partner for this Storyfest is Meadows Recovery. And so here to represent Meadows Recovery and tell us a little bit about Meadows and herself is Dina. I almost
Annette.
said it.
I was
almost said
waiting.
it.
Just do it.
Well, I almost said Barnes. Actually, but we call her affectionately Antoinette. So here we are, Antoinette.
Hi. Sorry about the voice. So I am Dina, of course, Annette. And I work with the Meadows. I also am a Meadows alumni of their inpatient at the Meadows of Texas. I commenced from severe alcoholism back in 2018. So the Meadows is in Wickenburg. It's in Wickenburg, Arizona, California, Texas. We also have intensive outpatients all over the country. We have one actually here in Las Vegas. Yeah. So what the Meadows does is we treat mental health disorders, anxiety, PTSD, trauma, substance use disorder, sex addiction, eating disorders. We also do workshops based off of survivors, intimacy issues, family issues that are 1 week programs that we just encompass all of the behavioral health system.
So what is it? Why do you think it was a good partnership for us to be with Meadows, and what's your story?
The experience, strength, and hope, especially with our alumni. So I work directly with the alumni. That is part of my job. Other part is I'm also the Onward Recovery Coach, also the co-creator of the recovery coaching program with the Meadows. Our alumni system is, you're not going to find it anywhere else. We have over 14,000 alumni from all over the world. They are just a true inspiration of what recovery can look like. And recovery isn't just substance use disorder. It's from everything. It doesn't matter what it is. You can be recovering from anything. Our alumni are just so brave and courageous. And when they share their stories, you just want to sit there and just continue to listen to them. And you can't help but cheer them on.
Mm-hmm. Is formulating and sharing their stories part of the recovery process?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We encourage them to tell as little or more of what they want to. Sometimes they just want to share one word. Mm-hmm. And that'll be at the beginning of, say, an event. By the end of the event, they're talking to us like we've been best friends and telling us all of it, vulnerability, shame, because they feel safe in their community.
Mm-hmm.
So Dina was part of What's Your Story year and a half ago, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
was the first time that she joined. And so she had this incredible story, and I met Dina because of her brother, Jeff Barnes. And so when I heard about her story, I was like, oh my gosh, you have to come and be a speaker. And so the transformation, let's just talk about that just a second. So she's on the stage hiding behind a podium, and she has her hands in her pockets, and she tells her story, delivering it like da 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 da, like that. For the first time. But I was like so proud of you because you got up and did it,
Yep.
right?
Well, thank you.
And then of course last year you just like took over the stage, and it was like incredible, and just the transformation from that the very first time until now. I mean, you have like a new position at the company.
Yes.
You've like written a coaching program. You're out. I got the pleasure of watching you interact with your group the other night, which I was just amazed at watching that. So let's talk about then and now, and where are you going?
Then it was all new. It was the very first time. Missy, you're very good about, putting me on the spot.
Voluntoling
You
people?
do it very well. I'm so used to telling my story to inpatient and at AA meetings. But now I get to talk and speak to the alumni, where it's such a safe space that I've just gotten so comfortable with it. And this year has been really, even though we're in the 5th month, I feel like I have lived like 5 decades since January. But it's me owning it.
Yeah.
And when I start owning it, that's when you start getting kind of the more me, because I can sit there and talk about substance use disorder till I'm blue in the face. I can tell you all you need to know about Dr. Bob and Bill W. and AA. But it's the other part of it that people don't like to talk about, the emotional sobriety of it. That is when you really start to become you. The vulnerability, the shame. Because the substance use disorder is basically, it's just a symptom. But you got to get down to why. You have to find your why. You have to find your purpose. It can't just be so surface level.
Right.
You just seem so much more confident and comfortable in your own skin. And would you say that doing what you're doing now is part of your why?
Yes.
Yeah.
I also have an amazing team I work with. Aaliyah just pushes us to be who we are, that it's okay to be who we are. She doesn't do it in a way that, it's like, okay, I'm going to shy away. Where we all kind of complement each other. I've got an amazing team that we all work together, where we kind of encourage each other. Instead of it's like, no, that's not going to work. Instead, it's let's try this. If it doesn't work, let's reframe it. And I could not ask for a better support system. And what's also come out of this year is we are hearing more from the alumni of what an employee and employer relationship should really look like, and how employers should embrace the mental health aspect of things and go on that journey with them instead of stalling and holding them back.
So, kind of like to get back to my question that I asked. So, the partnership with Meadows. So, last October, Meadows purchased a table at What's Your Story, and then this year, you guys became our story partner. And so, the connection, though, is what I was getting at. Is the connection between Meadows and What's Your Story? Is we both share kind of like the same vision of the whole point of why you want to share what you've been through is to help other people
Yes,
and build a community.
if we can get one person some help, then we're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing. We have just launched our testimonials last week that are on Instagram and on the Meadows websites. And just to listen to those, it's just like, wow, we really are making a difference. We are really changing individuals' life from the time they enter treatment ongoing into the aftercare. And this is a community, it doesn't stop. This goes on and on and on no matter what.
And just the hope that provides whoever's listening to stories through What's Your Story, or the testimonials, or them telling the stories there, that could save someone's life.
Yes.
Just, if this person can do it, she has a similar thing that happened to her, I can do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have alumni, so we also have an app for the alumni that they're able to get resources. They're able to, post if they're struggling. And it is really awesome to see if someone is struggling, that we will get text messages saying, hey, so-and-so struggling, do you mind reaching out? It's that big of a community to make sure that we are all okay, that it's a safe space.
Well, I want to thank Meadows Recovery for being our story sponsor this year. We appreciate it so much. And we love having the partnership with you. And thank you for coming today to represent Meadows. And stay tuned, because Dina will be back a little later to share an update on her story. And it's going to melt your face off. So you're not going to want to miss it. Thank you so much, Dina.
You are welcome.
Thank
Thank
you,
you for
Dina.
having me.
Thank you. All right, you're up.
All right. So we have a special treat for everybody right now. I like to call him Double D. That is David Dendy, the stand-up speaker in the house. And he is one of my favorite people to see on stage speak, whether it's a profound message or just in conversation. He has started his comedic journey a couple years ago and has just been killing it. He naturally has a humor about him, even if he is being profound. Laugh often and fear not, right? That's his tagline. And I am just so excited to hear what you have to share with us. We're going to have a levity break here, and he's going to do some comedy for us and keep us laughing often. So take it away, Double D.
Yay!
Hey, hey, hey! Great to be here at Storyfest, and I am David Dendy, and I like Michelle said, started this comedic journey actually back in 2020, right before the pandemic, which was the worst time to become involved in comedy, because going to comedy clubs, one of the first things I say is, "Hey, I'm David Dendy. I'm from Las Vegas," and everyone goes, "Yay!" And then I say, "And I'm a pastor." And it just gets deadly quiet. And I'm like, continue to hold your applause, because no one claps when you say you're a pastor. Even people in my own congregation. And I'm in Las Vegas. They don't clap for me when I get on stage. And people in Vegas, we clap for anything and everything. I mean, dog shows, fountains, Wayne Newton. We even clap for the Raiders. So, I mean, we clap for anybody, except for me. So try this when you go home at your next family gathering. Get everyone's attention and say, "Hey, I've made the decision to become a pastor," and see what happens. No one claps. I guarantee you, no one will clap. But one question I get all the time is, what's it like how can you be a pastor in Sin City? Job security. Job security. My flock grows week after week. We slow down a little bit. Attendance gets a little sparse during Super Bowl. But other than that, we're just going just full pedal to the metal. And we're just a little bit different than maybe other typical American churches. Some churches have bingo. We said, heck with that. We put slot machines in the fellowship hall, and wow, that has really added a lot of excitement to the life of the church. And it's a little disconcerting when you're in the middle of a baptism and you got Uncle Joe from Jersey down there saying, "Trinity, Trinity, Trinity, jackpot! Yeah, can I get another drink over here, please?" It's just a little awkward. But we take up an offering just like every other church does, except we get rings, we get room keys, we get comps, we get poker chips. It's just crazy. I took the choir to the Sands Buffet a few weeks ago, put those comps to work, and while they were chowing down, I went and put those poker chips to work because, hey, that roof isn't going to reshingle itself. We're Presbyterian. We're not Amish. Come on. But here is something, this is true. So in Las Vegas, there is a Catholic priest who goes around to every church on Monday morning and picks up leftover poker chips that people have put in the offering. He's known as the chipmunk. I know, that's terrible, but you'll be telling it to someone else this week, I guarantee you. But, we're just a little bit different in the sense that usually for my sermons, people are betting in the congregation on the over-under on how long my message is going to be. I do marriages. It's $100 extra if you want me to dress up like Elvis, which I have done on a couple occasions. I do funerals. It's $200 extra if I don't dress up like Elvis. So, it just, other than that, we're just the typical American church. So I do, like I said, I do marriages, and I think the stats are these days 54% of marriages end in divorce. That's a little disconcerting. But you know what that means? 46% end in death. So either way, it doesn't look like it's going to work out very well. But just want to let you know you got some options out there. And it's great to be here in the studio, and you're out there watching online here. And I wish I could say this is the fewest number of people in person I've performed in front of, but I was at a nightclub that only had 2 people by the time I got up on stage, and one person was on their phone, and it didn't work out very well. So hopefully this audience of 4 here in the studio will be a little bit more lively than that group. So I do marriages and then also do funerals. And so here's a little public service announcement, a little PSA for everybody. Be careful where you die. That's the word today. Be careful where you die. Now, I think Las Vegas is a pretty good place to die. We got lots of desert out there to be buried in, so no problem there. But for instance, a couple years ago, I was at a funeral in Kentucky. I'm not sure that's the best place to die. But anyway, the mom passed away. The daughter called the mortuary, the funeral home, and said, "Hey, Mom passed away. Can you come by and pick her up?" And after offering their Kentucky condolences, they said, "Well, how big a girl was she?" What? What do you mean, how big? Well, evidently, they need to know, do we bring the F-150, the F-250, or do we dust off the big old diesel to come pick Mom up? Crazy. True story. Kentucky, might want to stay away from Kentucky. But even after they come pick up the body, this is why cremation is so popular. Number one, you get down to your goal weight. That's always nice with cremation. You can take the ashes, you can divvy them up into, make a little vase and put that on your dashboard on your car, or you can put it on a bracelet or put it on a little locket, right here on your necklace. One of the great things about cremation is that your deceased loved one can still participate in family game night when you have the little timer. So there you go. It can always be around. So that's always good. Oh, me. So, but there is paperwork that has to be done. And so in Kentucky, I don't know if it's anywhere else, but in Kentucky, you'll be going down and you have to fill out a cremation application. I don't know who gets denied, but anyway, you have to fill it out. And we came down to a spot, and there's a little box there that says witnessing, $75 charge. Witnessing, what is that about? Well, evidently you can pay $75 for a third-party person to come in and watch Grandpa Bob go into the cremation chamber. This is to prevent lawsuits from people saying, "Hey, these ashes, they're kind of crusty, and I'm not sure this is really Uncle Bob. Maybe this is a cat or a dog or something." So this prevents lawsuits. And some people are like, "These just smell like the menthols I smoke. I don't know what's the deal here." So that's so that's part of it. Now, what's fascinating though, if you don't want to pay that, then there's another box you can check. It says text message. You put your phone number down. They'll text you to tell you when to come in to see Grandpa Bob yourself. It's the same business model that Applebee's uses, let you know your table's ready, kind of thing. But I will say I was pretty impressed. I was impressed with this other feature they offer. There's another line. You can put down your email address, and then they can send you a Zoom link so you can watch Uncle Bob on Zoom go into the cremation chamber. You don't even have to have your pants on. I mean, it's great. It's great. Love it. And the Zoom link has all the bells and all the whistles, that come with it. You can chat with family members. You can record it. So over Thanksgiving, you can rewatch it, watch it with the family and everybody. I mean, good times. So, anyways. Well, has anyone heard? I think for funeral homes and for mortuaries, there needs to be Yelp reviews for these folks. I mean, I don't think they exist right now, but we need to know, as the public need to know, how are these funeral homes on? How do they do with makeup? With hairstyling, are they going to look grandma and look good? What about the caskets? Are they scratch proof? Are they dent proof? Do they even offer a lifetime warranty? These are the things we need to know. But anyway, speaking about cremation, has anyone ever heard of the Neptune Society? Oh, the Neptune Society, America's leading cremation service provider. And I received in the mail not too long ago a little flyer here offering me, it says, considering cremation, join the Neptune Society. When I think society, I think of, little cucumber sandwiches and people in long dresses. But the Neptune Society, is this like Pyromaniacs Anonymous? Is this what's going on here? But join the Neptune Society for a free lunch, an informational seminar on the benefits of pre-planning your cremation. And where do they have this lunch? Lucille's Smokehouse. What? That's the best place we can find Lucille's Smokehouse? But I mean, maybe this is Mecca for these type of people. And the more I thought about it, maybe when I get cremated, when the time comes, maybe they could throw in a few little extra smoke-flavored wood chips, like pecan or applewood or some mesquite, something like that, so that when people come to my house and they open up my urn, they go, oh yeah, it smells just like David. He loved a good backyard barbecue. Oh yeah, that's great. So, something to think about. Neptune Society. Well, has anybody been flying lately? I mean, you hear about Boeing and parts flying off airplanes. You kind of but I want to tell you something. As a pastor, when I get on an airplane, people are so happy that I'm on board. The pilots come by. Hey, thanks for being on board. The flight attendants, they give me free drinks. Everyone's smiling. Everyone's happy because there's this weird idea that if a pastor's on a plane, God's not going to take the plane down. I don't know where this comes from, but I can say from personal experience, this is true. I've never been in a plane crash, so this is good. Now, when I go by Greyhound, no one's excited to have me on board. People have to stop drinking, stop watching their porn, and I mean, that's just the bus driver. So, I mean, it's terrible. But when you fly, all the brochures and all the commercials, they say, oh, look how wonderful it is to fly, and we get there soon and fast, and it's so nice, and look at all this. It's going to be great do But what happens when you get on the plane? Oh, the first thing they tell you is buckle up. Where else do you go where they tell you to buckle up? Can you imagine, like, you go to church or you go to school and, well, before we get started, everyone needs to buckle up. I mean, that would concern me. And there's a little sign that says, fasten seatbelt while seated. I tried it standing up, and it's right. You have to be seated to fasten your seatbelt. It's amazing. But what's the first thing they tell you? Then they start telling, once you're buckled up, then they tell you all the unlikely things that could happen while you're on the plane. Kind of like I live near Red Rock Reserve Conservation Area. And when you drive out there, there's a sign out there that says, do not feed the donkeys. Well, number one, I didn't know there were donkeys out here. And number two, maybe I could feed them. They're giving me ideas I've never thought about before. And so it is with these flight attendants. First thing they say is, in case of a water landing. A water landing? You mean I can't make it past, this plane's not going to make it past Lake Mead? I mean, it's just 10 miles away. How can this be? And they say, in case of a water landing, use your seat cushion as a flotation device. That's comforting, isn't it? But the reality is, all the planes that have crashed in the ocean over the last 75 years Have you ever seen a clip on YouTube, on Instagram, of anybody just walking down the beach and then, oh, what is this? And they reach down and they pick up a seat cushion from an airplane. It doesn't happen. These seat cushions are filled with lead crystals. So when you grab onto it, you just sink down to the bottom. They just want you to die fast as possible. It doesn't float, I can guarantee you. And then they say, well, in case of air cabin depressurization. What? You mean the plane could start crashing in on itself? Oh, yes. But you're going to have oxygen masks that fall, and then put it on yourself first. They tell you, put it on yourself first. Why? So you can watch your children die right next to you. You know, crazy. But put it on yourself. And then they have the audacity to say this. Oxygen is flowing through the tube, through the bag, even though the bag will not inflate. Have you ever blown into a bag that did not inflate? You know why it is? You know why it doesn't inflate? Because it's not oxygen. It's anesthesia. They just want you to put you to sleep, because who wants the horrors of those last 2 minutes on the plane? So anyway, so then they say, hey, in the unlikely event that you have to throw up, you know what we've done for you? We've provided these wonderful little bags for you. You ever tried to throw up in one of these bags? 2 inches by 2 inches? My conscience. This thing, I have enough trouble throwing up in a toilet, much less a bag. And look at this. This was what cracks me up. It's got a little patent number on it. A patent. This was like the lunch bag I took to school every day in elementary school. Maybe what is patented are these little tabs on the top. Now you can fold it out. Now I have asked some of my flight attendant friends, tell me about these bags. They said, well, we really appreciate it when someone throws up in this. Fold it over, put the tabs on, and hold it like this so that the flight attendant can come by and grab it from the bottom. And that warm liquid just feels so good in their palms. It's just great. So make sure you do that. Oh my gosh. Then, in the unlikely event that you have to go to the bathroom, oh my gosh. You ever been in one of the bathrooms on these things? Obviously, they were invented by a woman. So imagine. Curvature of the plane. You know, woman walks in, sits down, no problem, curvature, sits down. Can you still see me? Yep. Sits down. No problem, right? Push the button, flush. Now, wait a minute. Make sure you know this. You know, there's a 2-second delay from the time you push the button and it flushes. You know why? Because if you were still sitting on the toilet, guess what happened? You'd get sucked to the toilet. And then you'd be knocking on the door. And then they got to come in, get a spoon, let the pressure off, and then it's bad news. So, just letting you know some of these unlikely events that might take place. But what about a man going into one of these bathrooms? You walk in, close the door. Oh, you hit that ceiling. You know how far away that commode is from you? It's impossible, especially for us over 60. You're not going to make it. Not going to make it. So you have to start bending back like this, trying to get up close to the toilet. And then there's turbulence, and you're trying to relax. It's terrible. So anyway, just telling you about some of these unlikely events that might happen. Now, as a pastor, sometimes we get kind of put into a bind where we have to be very careful about things that we say and we have to say. There's one story of a small town that was run by 2 brothers. And these 2 brothers, they were the meanest, rudest, most backstabbing 2 brothers anybody had ever met in their life. Well, then one day one of them died. And the other brother went around to all the churches looking for someone to do the funeral. And no one would do it because he made this offer. He said, I'll pay any pastor $1,000 to do the funeral for my brother, but he has to say he was a saint during the service. Well, everybody turned him down, except for the Presbyterian pastor. That's right. So the day of the funeral came, and then the whole town came out, packed in the church, because they knew what the bet was. They knew the pastor had to say he was a saint. And so people were in there, and the murmuring was going on and everything, and then the funeral service began. And the pastor got up there and said, well, you know Larry, he was the meanest, most backstabbing, rudest man in town. But compared to his brother, hey, I'm David Dendy. Thanks for joining us here at Storyfest 2024. Have a great day.
Hey,
That was great.
that was great, David.
He had me crying over here.
Very nice. You know, I people ask me, you know, who make the best storytellers, and quite honestly, in all seriousness, I think preachers and comedians are the best storytellers. If you think about it, preachers are used to telling the greatest story ever told, and the stories throughout the Bible, and they have to do it every single week, and they do it probably 3 or 4 times every Sunday or on Saturday. Comedians are masters of timing and masters of using your audience. And David, you just you fit the bill on all of that. So thank you so much for coming out and sharing.
David. You were awesome.
That was fantastic.
Oh, that was. He just cracks me up.
He's so funny.
Makes
So
you want to go
funny.
to church, and maybe hear some of these stories. So
It does.
some of his airline conspiracies, though, I don't know. I don't know if that would fly.
I never thought of how men need to urinate in an airplane bathroom until that visual
until
that
now.
David gave
Yeah.
us.
Thank you
Very
for that.
unnerving and yet
Right.
interesting, right?
All right. So, as I said before, we cannot do these things without our sponsors. And so, for this Story Fest, we already learned and talked about Meadows Recovery. And so, their information will be floating on the screen. And you want to talk about ESI, Gerard?
Yeah. So we've got a couple of other folks that we want to talk about. ESI Systems is one of our other sponsors. They've been here in the Las Vegas area for 24 years. And what they do is they're a security systems integrator. We talk about the need to protect assets. If you have a business, you have computer equipment, or for that matter, you want to protect your employees, you need some kind of good security system to monitor. They do surveillance, they do monitoring, and they also have very, very new technology and modern technology. They use ground-based radar, among other things, but all the modern forms of security-related systems. They serve utility industry, healthcare industries, commercial, industrial markets, and once again, ESI Systems, one of the leading security systems here in Southern Nevada. We're glad to have them as a sponsor.
Yes. Want to talk about Maverick?
Yeah. So Maverick Marketing is also one of our sponsors, and the owner of Maverick Marketing is a very good friend of ours, Kara Cohen. Hey, Kara, if you're watching. Her and I actually do quite a bit of business together over in our marketing and branding world. Maverick Marketing really focuses on the marketing strategy of a business. And a lot of people, I think, forget about that piece of it when they're building a business or wanting to grow a business. And Kara, the founder, she has over 25 years of experience just understanding how to tell the story in marketing, and also because there's a lot of facets that go into it. There's tracking data. They're seeing what's working, what's not working, connecting with the audience. We talk a lot about story. Telling the brand story and how to do that correctly and be able to grow your business. So that is Maverick Marketing, and you can take a look at her website. It is 360maverick.com. Thank you, Kara.
Awesome.
Thanks, Kara.
And then we're going to, during our next speaker, the three of us are going to go real quickly. We have another sponsor that was gracious and provided our lunch for us today, Three Little Chicks. They're also the owners of Cafe Lola here in town. They're also the owners of St. Honore. And so shout out to Lynn Jerome and Alexandra Lourdes for providing lunch for us today. So when we're back for our next segment, we'll be showing off their food and telling you how delicious it is. So you can go to Three Little Chicks yourself and experience their new chicken place.
All right, boy, that
Yeah.
sounds good. Excited for
Excited.
that. So we're going to go to our next speaker now.
Yep.
I am so thrilled about our next speaker. She was also part of our beta class, and I've got to kind of watch her storytelling techniques evolve. Talking about Shani Hoskins, who is going to share with us some inspirational moments about her own life. She's a storyteller, a spiritual counselor, specifically talking about personal growth. And please enjoy. Shani, once again, thank you so much for being with us today, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. So, how is it that I'm here sharing my story today? Well, over the years, people I've shared pieces of my story with, friends, some family, said, you know what? You really need to share your story. You should write a book, because perhaps sharing your story would help other people in their times of trials and perhaps tribulations, and give them some strength and encouragement so they don't feel like they're so alone. So last summer, I had the opportunity to go to the Chautauqua Institution. I don't know if any of you have ever been to the Chautauqua Institution or ever heard of it. However, I had an opportunity to take a writing class. It was my first ever writing class, since high school, so that was a long time ago. And I showed up ready with my notebook, my pencil, ready to go. Sit down. There are 4 other people in the class, along with the instructor who used to be Wolf Blitzer's editor on CNN and also had published several novels himself. There was another lady across from me. She was a poet and had had a number of her poems published in local papers and different publications. Another gal by her had written like 3 or 4 different novels, though she hadn't had any of them published yet because she was worried her parents would really find out how weird she was. So she didn't publish any of her books yet. Then next to her was a gentleman who was a pastor. So obviously he wrote her sermons every week. And then he also wrote little bits for his local newspaper. Next to me, to my right, was a woman who had gotten her master's degree in creative writing from, I think it's Iowa University, the number 2 university in the entire United States on writing. And then there was me. So I really felt like I didn't belong, and I was happy to share that with the rest of the class and with the teacher. I said, look, I don't know that I really belong in this class. And he said, no, go ahead, stay. We're going to have an assignment tonight, and then we'll all share tomorrow, and we'll just help each other out. So with fear and trepidation, I agreed to stay. I went home, went back to where I was staying, and I started writing my story. And the next morning, I shared with the class, and this is what I wrote. Out from the neonatal intensive care unit, we stepped. Out from the relentless beeps of heart monitors, oxygen alarms, underfootings and squeaks of the nurses' shoes as they scurried from one tiny bundle of joy to another. Out into the narrow, faintly lit, eerily silent hallway we stepped. Dr. Harmon, my husband Lou, and me. Dr. Harmon's a tall, commanding, yet soft-spoken man who, at first glance, kind of reminded me of Dr. Alan Quartermain from General Hospital, Prince Charming, attached with a well-deserved reputation of one of the premier neonatal surgeons along the Pacific Rim. 6 hours after our son Adrian was born, Dr. Harmon completed surgery attaching his esophagus to his stomach. We were told by the hospital staff that we were very fortunate that Dr. Harmon was on call and available to perform Adrian's life-saving surgery, or rather, as Dr. Harmon was to tell us, potentially life-saving surgery. You see, I'm going to be straight up with you. While I was able to attach the ever so thin piece of esophageal tissue to your son's stomach, there's no guarantee that it's going to hold, or if it will function properly. I also need to tell you that there appears to be quite a number of other things severely wrong with him. What do you mean, other things severely wrong with him? Well, it's too soon, really, to diagnose all of them right now. Let's just see if he makes it through the night. If he does, well, you'll have some decisions to make. What do you mean decisions to make? I don't understand. What do you... Well, I mean, what to do with him, of course. My recommendation for you is to give him over to the state of California to take care of him, because if you decide to take care of him yourself, your life is over. After sending us a pitying look, he turned his back on us and walked to the elevator. I chased after him as if stopping him would somehow make him change his mind about what he had just said to us. Maybe give him a chance at least to say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But I'm too late. I arrive as the elevator doors are closing, and I drop down to my knees, pounding on the elevator doors, shouting, wait, please, don't go. I don't understand. And then I collapse onto the icy NICU floor, wailing uncontrollably. At any minute, I expected my combustible heart to just explode and shoot out of my chest. What are we gonna do? Oh God, please, what are we gonna do? I turn and look at my husband, Lou. He hadn't moved from where he had been standing when the doctor had told us the terrible news. He just stood there. His eyes face forward, his mouth dropped, hung open. I run up to him. I start banging on his chest. Lou, what are we gonna do? He just says, I don't know. So I reach down and gently take his hand and lead him back into the chaotic noise of the neonatal intensive care unit. Back to the little isolette that cradled our son, Adrian. Our beautiful son, Adrian. When you first look at him amongst all the little preemies, you might think that he's the healthy one because he's 6 pounds and 7 ounces. Raven black hair, pearl white skin, ruby red lips. A beautiful baby. You would think he was the healthy one, except for all the tubes attached to him and all the monitors attached to him. You would think otherwise. I don't know if you can see these, but there they are. I said to Lou, we're keeping him. God gave him to us to raise, so we're keeping him. Lou just nodded his head, yes. Said, yes, we'll keep him. Then as we turned to leave the NICU unit, taking off all of our sanitary gowns and hats and gloves, turned the handle on the door to step out into the hallway, into that cold, dark hallway, I remember thinking to myself, my life is over. Well, Adrian did make it through the night, and then a few more nights, 4 more nights, and then a month later they said, okay, he's ready, you can take him home now. And I was like, no, I'm not ready. What do I know about taking care of a medically fragile child? I was afraid he would die if I had to take care of him. I mean, I was a PhD candidate in religious studies and art. I knew nothing about medication and keeping a baby alive with so many needs. And they said, no, you'll be fine. You'll figure it out. I did. It was like baptism by fire, really. But I did. And there were lots of different doctors we'd have to go and see. The first doctor we went to see was a geneticist, and he told us that we think he probably has charge syndrome. I said, charge syndrome, what's that? Well, it's something kind of new. There's only really 30 known cases in the whole world, and we think your son is one of those. So needless to say, there wasn't a whole lot of help we could get in the beginning because no one really knew what was going on. And that reminds me, can I just say, some people should not be doctors, right? Some people should not be doctors. We went in this one time, we had just found out, like a week before we saw this hearing doctor, that our son was blind. So we're going in, we're sitting down. They went and took Adrian to do the hearing tests. This doctor comes back in, and the first thing he says to us is, I have to tell you, I'm going through this divorce, and my lawyer might try and call. We've been playing phone tag, so if the phone rings, I'm probably gonna have to step out and take it. Are you kidding me? So by the way, your son is profoundly deaf. He can't hear anything. And that's because his oval windows are covered with bone, and there's probably nerves that didn't grow behind that. And ring, 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 ring. Oh, it's him. I gotta go. And he leaves. I'm in shock. I'm holding my baby. I'm cradling him, and I'm crying. I'm like, he's blind and he's deaf. A nurse comes in. The doctor sees that you're upset, and that he said you can have a Valium if you want. I said, I don't want a Valium. I want my son to hear. And I just thought some people should not be doctors. I hope now that they teach doctors a little more empathy, so it's not like your life is over. We did survive, and I learned how to take care of him. Deaf, blind, fed through a tube in his stomach. At 3 months of age, he had to have another surgery. And that surgery, we had to transport him from one hospital to another hospital. And in the transport ambulance, the nurse that was there said, so what's going on with him? How come he's going to another hospital? I said, well, he had this esophageal fistula repair, but I don't think it worked out very well. Now they're going to do a fundoplication, and then along with the fundoplication, they're talking about doing a pyloroplasty. But what I read, he goes, are you a nurse? I said, no, I'm just his mom. Just his mom. My dream was to get a PhD, and I was going to bring people into relationship with God by showing them all the amazing art and way people describe the relationships with God that I saw in Europe. As a Protestant, we got ripped off and didn't get. So that's what I was going to do. That was my dream. I didn't get to do that. I wasn't a nurse. I was just a mom, and whose life was over. So Adrian lived. In the midst of that, there was Lou, my husband, and I was so caught up in my own grief that I didn't even think really that much about what he was going through, because we had just each gone to our corners and put our nose in the hollows of grief and pain, and there we stood. One day, there was this incident in the bathroom Adrian had. It was a mess. I'd finally had it. I left him in the bathroom, shut the door, turned the fan on, shut the door. I ran outside. I went into my driveway, and I shouted up to God, and I said, my God, how could you forsake me? I was going to bring people into relationship with you, and you left me. Guess what? I don't need you. I'm going to figure this out on my own. And I turned around, stiff upper lip, went into the bathroom, cleaned up my son and all that mess, shut the door, and decided I didn't need anybody. I didn't need Lou. I'm going to figure this out on my own. Yeah, no, you know what my answer was? I need a hero. Yeah, I'm going to find somebody on their white horse. They're going to come in, take this burden away from me. Not so good. I did find someone, but it was from the frying pan into the fire. He was abusive to both Adrian and me. It was not good. Did have two amazing, what we call typical kids from that marriage, but then, another divorce. I forgot to mention that parents of children with disabilities have an 84% chance of getting divorced. And Lou and I promised each other that that wasn't going to be us. But it was. So when you spend each day caught up in your grief, and then each morning deciding, which mask am I going to wear today? Is it going to be this one? I want to be a martyr today. I think martyr's a good mask for today. Or maybe it's this one. Victim. I think victim is really where I should stay. Pity parties are great. I'm used to them. And I can invite other people. But my plan didn't work either. That plan to find somebody else didn't work. Got divorced again. My life was just one disappointment after another because as I found out of the choices that I made. I decided to go home. I needed some peace, figure out where I might find some happiness. So I wanted some peace, went to Las Vegas. Yeah, not the most peaceful place in the world. But that's home, right? And there I met a young woman who taught me about what it means to be reconnected with the Spirit of God. And she taught me about people like the Dalai Lama and Eckhart Tolle, who wrote the book, The Power of Now. And what I learned from them is this. When something tragic happens to you, you actually have a choice. You can choose to suffer, which is what I did for 30 some odd years. I chose to suffer, or you could choose to accept. Because then when you accept, now you can, okay, there's nothing I could have done about Adrian being deaf. There's nothing I could have done about Adrian being blind. There was nothing I could have done about all of those things. But I could choose how to respond. And I wish someone, as I'm saying to you today, would have said something to me about that 30 some odd years ago. Would I have been ready to receive it? I don't know. But maybe someone today is hearing me. You have a choice. Because if you take a moment right now with me and you close your eyes and you think about the word suffer, it doesn't feel good, does it? Can't breathe. But when you think about the word accept, resolution, now I can open my eyes and see what to do next. Now you may not be the parent of someone who has lots of different disabilities, but we all go through trials and tribulations in life, right? Whether you lose a job, lose a parent, your children move away before you're ready for them to. Different things happen to us, and we can get stuck in that pain. Just remember, please, it's a choice. You can choose to accept, or you can choose to suffer. Once I chose to accept, the way I looked at my son, Adrian, was so different. Instead of looking at him as part of the reason why my dream was lost and my dream for him was lost, I saw him so differently. You know, I loved him, always loved him. But then I saw him as the most beautiful, pure spirit, the gift of something fabulous. I know no one like him in the entire world. And I got to be his mom, and he has been my greatest teacher. And that has been a gift from God I did not expect. But I'm so happy to accept the gift that was given.
Wow.
Thank you, Shani. That was powerful.
I've heard your story a
really
couple
good.
times, and every time, my jaw just is open. Fantastic. Thank you.
Again, this idea that sometimes life throws something at you and you don't see the blessing out of it. You think it's just going to be burden, but there's really blessing there. And most of us have experienced something similar. But thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you, Shawnee.
Thank you,
You're an
Shawnee.
amazing storyteller.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yay.
So I want to talk real quick. So Michelle and I, Gerard didn't join us, but Michelle and I ran out and grabbed a plate. And
Oh,
so
I'm
I
going
want to
soon.
talk about Three Little Chicks. So if you have food allergies of any kind, like I do, I can't eat soy products. So when they started Three Little Chicks, they decided we want it to be clean, good food. And so anything that's fried, such as their fried pickles, delish.
Oh my God.
And the chicken that is breaded, we have the grilled tenders today, which are fantastic. But they use a quinoa flour for their chicken, and they fry in avocado oil, and they fry the fries in avocado oil. They also have sweet potato fries. They have their slaw is an apple cabbage slaw that's very good. They make their sauces are house made in-house. So they have lots of gluten-free options. So it's just a great place to go and have lunch or dinner. Three Little Chicks, they're located at Buffalo and Sunset. I highly recommend them. And they're great ladies that have all women-owned businesses. So it's pretty awesome.
First time I've had it, and it's delicious.
It's very good.
Yep.
They use free-range, like organic chicken. So it's like, a place you can go to and actually feel good about the fact that you're eating, which
Yeah.
is nice.
Very good. I think we're ready to move on to our next speaker, or do we have a video
No,
first?
we don't. So people ask me a lot, why am I so taken with story? Why do I love story so much? And it's because my dad, Jay Luster, was one of the greatest storytellers you can imagine. I grew up, I had the privilege of him being my dad for a lot of years. He passed when he was 95, but I talked him into speaking at a like-minded lunch one year, and he did. And he shared about his life and his business. And so Michelle put this awesome video of my dad together. And so I just want to share it with everybody so you get a glimpse of my dad sharing about his business.
I lived with a lot of people that helped raise me kind of on work and for room and board. That was during the Depression times and very difficult times. But it worked out pretty good. They were nice people, and I did like the family part of it because I was just the outsider there for a short period of time. And I joined the Navy after I graduated from high school. I survived World War II, and when I came back to the States and was ready to be discharged, I was discharged in Richmond, Virginia. I put my sea legs on the Trailway bus and sent them to Long Beach, California. I'd heard that California was the place to be. I hitchhiked from Richmond, Virginia to Long Beach, California. I arrived there with about $400, must be not paid, didn't know a soul, and managed to survive. And 4 years later, I started my first little electrical business. I wound up with a number of businesses in my life. I was a general contractor. I illuminated billboard signboards. I built kitchen cabinets, believe it or not. And one of the kind of strange things that I did is I got together with some friends of mine, and we started a small bank. The unusual thing about that is that I had my education in a kind of a farm high school, and that's the only time I've ever been to school. So being a banker was something new, but it wasn't too bad because I managed to get 10 other people together, and so we all started this bank, and we had a difficult time at first convincing some of the people that there was 10 people running this bank on the board of directors, and none of us had any idea I remember that. That was a little bit of a problem. But I survived. I'm 92 years old. I don't have any health problems that I know about. I'm lucky I don't go to the doctor. I think I've been pretty successful in my life. I retired when I was 70 years old, and I had accumulated a net worth of approximately $2.5 million. So from a poor old country boy, that to me was doing pretty good.
Wow, that's fantastic.
I
What a
will
great story.
never forget the day that he came home and told my stepmom and me, he said, so I'm getting these friends together and we're starting a bank. And we were like, what? I was like, what do you know about starting a bank?
Right.
And he's like, nothing. And we're like, no, okay.
I remember I used to go visit him at his assisted living, and there's a picture of, I guess, those 10 people that were on the board and started it. And I asked him about it, and oh, yeah, I started a bank. I'm like, what? You
Yeah.
did what?
It was very successful, and then it was bought out by First National Bank, who's since been bought out. But yeah, it was crazy. These guys.
I think it's fantastic. My father's from that same generation. My father turns 99 next month. Wow. And still with us. But if you think about it, they grew up, they were children of the Depression. You know, most people from that generation knew what it was like to be hungry at one point or another. They served during wartime, you know, and they experienced so much, you know, and that's why I think so many of them were great storytellers also, which is probably why Missy became such a great storyteller, because they have the great stories to tell.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Right.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Missy. I didn't know that story, so that was a treat for me too.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, I think we are ready now for our next speaker. We've already met Dina Annette, one of our story sponsors. You know, one thing about storytelling, if you're going to be an expert storyteller at something, really, in order to be an expert, you have to have lived an experience in order to be able to really factually and authentically be able to talk about it and describe it. Dina's a certified recovery coach, we know, with Meadows Recovery. She's been through recovery herself, and we talk about this whole space of behavioral health and the problems that so much of society faces today. You have firsthand experience not only with having traveled through this journey, but also in helping people overcome and live better lives. So we're happy to reintroduce once again Dina Annette. Thank you for sharing your story today, Dina.
Thank you. So I am Dina. Really hard to say. It's probably going to drop a bomb on a few. But March 2nd of 2024, I was planning to end my life. I know. Didn't know exactly how I was going to say that, but here we are. So just kind of hear me out on this, of where I was at, because this is absolutely a true story of navigating myself from the darkness to the light. So I do really, really, really well about talking about substance use disorder. I can talk to you all day about it. I can talk about where I work. I can talk people off of ledges. This morning alone, you know, I was able to talk someone off a ledge. But the problem is I struggle with talking myself off of a ledge. I can live very surface. It's just easier for me. I can disconnect. It's simple. That's my way and my coping strategy. But the problem is I have carried so much weight on my back for so many years that I just couldn't do it anymore. And that's how I ended up getting to that night of just pure turmoil. It all just sat right there, and I just didn't want to feel it anymore. So, as many of y'all know, this is an update to my story. A lot of individuals know that I came from Alaska. Yes, I left Alaska, but Alaska never left me. It's still been sitting there. And that demon, I have been dancing with that demon now for over 20 years. Even though I left, every situation, every single bit of emotional trauma, grief, work trauma, abuse was all sitting right there. And I was never one to really have to face it. I get a lot of individuals that'll tell me, people tell me all the time, oh my gosh, you have no emotion. You have no feelings. You know, my personal favorite is, you wear a cape. Yeah, I do. But doesn't mean that when I go home, that's who I am. My personal favorite is I'm too stoic. I really love that one. And it's true. I can do that. I can do that really, really well. Until this year, I couldn't anymore. This year, January, I knew I wasn't okay. So I went and sought a therapist. I was telling people, you know what? I need to be on solid ground. We're about to launch this new program that I have been a co-creator in. My life is about to change. I need to be on solid ground. The problem is I didn't deal with situations that had happened months prior to that, years prior to that, decades, childhood. I didn't deal with any of it. So I went and sought a therapist. Now, when I go to find a therapist, I know how to do it. I have to interview. I'm really good at that, okay? I knew exactly what I wanted. Well, I thought I knew what I wanted. Be careful what you wish for, folks. Be careful. So I go in, and two of them look like they were scared to death of me. And I'm like, this is not going to work. So I go into the third one, and she's about 5'1". And I'm like, okay, we're going to try this. And in comes Wanda Sykes into my life. So the first meeting with her, she stops me in the middle of it. And I mean, I can talk, and that's my way of coping through all of this. And she stops me because we were talking about my childhood. We were talking about my mom. And I call her Evelyn P. My brother Jeff, we all call her Evelyn P. And she stops me, and I go, wait, I'm not done. She goes, oh, no, we're done. I go, what do you mean we're done? And she goes, I need to know, does anybody in your family know that your mother passed away in 2007? I'm like, yeah, we all know. She goes, oh, no. She goes, I bet if I brought your siblings in here, you guys all talk like she was still sitting in this room. I'm like, oh, okay. First time I wanted to fire her. I continue on. So we get through that. She gives me some homework. I do my homework, and I'm very good at following directions. I like structure. But this homework was have a real conversation with your kids. So, I had a real conversation. And then the other part of that homework was, I also want you to look at your childhood, and I want you to tell me what you're going to keep from your childhood and what you're letting go. And I'm like, okay. I literally had to go talk to one of the therapists at Meadows to understand exactly what she was saying, because I had no idea. Because I've always been told, you keep your entire childhood. That's who you are. Guess what, folks? No, it's not who you are. It can change. So when she told me that was the second time I wanted to fire her. Third time, she wanted me to go to float therapy. Float therapy is where you sit in a pod of water, and you close the door, and you just float. And I like water. Great idea. But she didn't trust me. She had no faith in me whatsoever, and told me my next in-person appointment, I needed a receipt to prove that I did float therapy. Okay, here we go again, wanting to fire the therapist. So I go into float therapy, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I go in there, and she tells me exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And here's the problem with me is I like control. Well, when you're in this pot of water, you have no control over what time it is. There's no music. You can have it, but you have no sense of time. You have no watch. Nothing. And all you're doing is sitting there and you're floating. And the great thing about this first float session is I love music. So I have a soundtrack going through my head. I am listening to Finding Nemo, just keep floating, just keep floating. Then I switch over and I suddenly go to Hamilton. I am not throwing away my shot. And at this point, I'm like, okay, I have gone through soundtracks. I have no sense of time, no clue what I'm doing. So I get out. I had 8 minutes left of that 60-minute session. In my mind, I failed. Here I am failing again. And that just spiraled into so many other things because I was failing at life. I was failing at friendships. I was failing at my family. I was failing at all of it. And now I have failed one of the simplest things in life of just floating in water because I did not complete that. It didn't matter that the therapist at the float therapy said, you know what, here's what we're going to do next time. We'll play the music 15 minutes into your float session. Then we're going to stop the music. And then I'm going to give you a prompt 5 minutes until it's over. So you know that it's going to end. I didn't hear any of that. And what that float session did was propel me into a downward cycle. See, I can perform very, very well. But I go on autopilot. That what you see is me, but I'm not really there. In the midst of all this, I had to let go of a very close friendship where was really my best friend at the time, but it was serving me no purpose. So I had written a letter, and I am not one to let go of anything. I'm one of those that holds on. I can always try and find something good in somebody. It doesn't matter how destructive it is. I can give you 5,000 reasons to justify why I still need to be friends with this person. So I wrote this amazing letter to the point that I literally could be ChatGPT at this point that I wrote this letter. It was that good. And I sent it, but I sent that on March 2nd. And that is what sent me to that night. So that evening, it was just me, perfect storm. Roommates were gone. I had just gotten back from a trip. All of this stuff was just spiraling and circling in my brain. And I don't know if anybody else has ever felt this, but sometimes you can see the crash in your head. You see it happening. And you're just waiting, and you're just waiting, and you're just waiting. And that night, I could see the crash happening. And I waited. And I waited. And sometimes just waiting, the night can be so long. 1 hour can feel like 15 hours, and it continues on. And I found myself back in the same position as the night of when I went to treatment at the Meadows of Texas, rocking back and forth. And see, this was the first time that I had experienced this sober. I have such a moral compass to not drink that I would not drink. I don't have so much of a moral compass when it comes to emotional sobriety. That is a real thing, and it hit me hard that night. So I'm rocking back and forth on my bed, and I'm just waiting for the sun to come up. And finally, the sun came up. And I told myself that night that when the sun came up, I've got to start changing my ways. Yes, I have a great life. I have a wonderful job, wonderful friends, an amazing life. But I wasn't me. So, talk to my therapist, and I go in there. And she knew what was going on. And she puts her clipboard down, and she gets real close to me. And she looks at me dead straight in the eyes. I'm extremely uncomfortable at this point, extremely. And she goes, "It is about time you showed up for yourself." Changed my entire life. So, from there, I am continuing on with the therapy. I start owning it. I start talking about it. I start writing more. I let my boss know what was going on. It was not exactly one of our most joyful conversations. I had planned this whole thought process of, we were going to be at the Lone Star Court and doing an event in Austin and sitting by the fire pit having a Diet Coke and lime and, just being ourselves. And I was just going to kind of slowly drop that. No, it didn't happen that way. It just, all of a sudden I go, I need to speak at the retreat and this is what I'm going to speak on. And eyes got really big in the screen and she goes, okay, let's do it. Let's go. And from that point on, I started seeing things differently. I started owning more and more. That's when, that same week, I finally admitted I was a workaholic. That same week, I finally admitted, you know what? I have an eating disorder. I have no shame whatsoever talking about it. I like to control everything around me when everything isn't working in my favor. I will control what I eat. I will control every little portion of it because I like the feeling of being hungry, because if I'm hungry, that means I'm in control of it. I like to control my sleep because if I don't sleep, that means I can get more work done. If I get more work done, I get more validation. This is the way my thought process works. So I am working on the entire reprogramming of myself at this point. And those are the changes that a lot of individuals are telling me. They're like, what's wrong with you? You actually, there's something there. And I realized, you know what? Yeah, there's a lot there. There's a lot more there than just wearing a cape and being a superhero. I don't have to be that all the time. I'd much rather be known for helping others through my own journey, not just the substance use disorder, but all the other crap behind it. For being able to speak up for others that can't speak up, that have gone through all of this. See, everybody wants to talk about, the alcoholism or PTSD. They don't want to talk about the other stuff behind it. The really bad days of when you can't get out of bed. We're celebrating the success that you actually got up out of bed and brushed your teeth that day. Because sometimes that is the hardest thing you could ever do. So from that point on, I wake up every morning and I say, look at where I was and look at where I'm at now. And that changes every single morning. Every morning. It's not the same. I can always find good in it, but I don't use those same taglines. I love using the words, you know what? I'm okay. I'm fine. I don't really use those anymore. You know what? Some days I'm not okay. Some days it just sucks. And I'm okay with that. I don't have to live my life with an and or. I now live it as everybody should, as anything and everything.
Thank you, Dina, so much for sharing your story and being vulnerable with us. And I'm so thankful that you're a part of our What's Her Story family and being a sponsor, Meadows being a sponsor. And I'm glad that you decided to stay here with everybody.
Thank you for being so transparent. And, usually we have something where you wave if you identify with the story, and I could have just held it up again. I think every time you talk, I'm like, yep. So thank you for just sharing. And I know that your story has helped others and will continue to. So I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. I think one of the things, too, with storytelling that we haven't really touched on is it's liberating for yourself as the storyteller, because a lot of us have a tendency to hold things in deep down and kind of ignore and not deal with issues, right? I mean, we all have something. But once you publicly release that out into the space and out into the audience, it's freeing for yourself, and it's also useful for people who are listening. It's inspiring for the people who are receiving,
Right.
on the receiving end. So, Dina's a classic example of that.
She
that
sure
part of
is.
it.
Yes,
Yes,
she is.
She is, for sure.
So we're talking about Compassion International.
Yes, we are. So, like I said earlier, Compassion International has definitely been a thing for me for 12 years. And the reason why is I wanted nothing more when I was growing up to be a mom. And I had, pretty much decided to get married, have lots of children, and I love babies. And it just never happened for Fred and I. Not, we certainly tried other means, and everything just sort of seemed to fall through for us. And so when I was at a Christian concert and the person was sharing their story about Compassion International and about how you can sponsor a child, and you have interaction with this child, you can send them things. They write letters back and forth. You know exactly where your money is going. It's not going to the CEO of the organization and the child is getting $1 a month or something, like that. And I had a great experience with Compassion, and my child aged out last year because there's an age limit. And so I thought, well, I want another child. And Michelle and I went and saw For King and Country, and they were talking about Compassion International. And so we both signed up for a child, so we're both sponsoring. And then What's Your Story also is sponsoring a child. And so those are like my kids, and it's an opportunity for me to still be a mom from afar and know that I am helping a child get out of poverty. But the most important part is that I am helping a child have a relationship with Jesus. And Compassion International is something that was started to not only help the children get out of poverty and give them the needs, basic needs for them to grow up, but also to have a local church come behind them and help them out too. And so they learn lots of things. They get a Bible. They learn about Jesus, compassion, love, and things like that. And so when it was when we were at this For King and Country concert that it was like, ding, ding. All these country artists and everything partner with Compassion International. Why can't we do the same? And so all the papers have been signed and the contracts have been dotted. And so now, do you want to grab a couple of the packets?
I'm going to move this back down.
So we have decided with Compassion that we have targeted a certain community in El Salvador. And so our community of What's Your Story is now going to be helping a specific community in El Salvador with all of these children. And so we have 9 packets with us here today of children. But if you could show that slide again, Rick. You can also text Storyfest to 833-933, or you can scan that barcode, and it'll take you to our very own evergreen link that links us to Compassion. And you can look through all the children that are available in El Salvador. It's only $43 a month, and you would be surprised what the $43 goes for. It's amazing. You get letters. Your child writes. You want to talk about Eric?
Yeah. So just real quick, when Missy was saying, so I don't have children either, and I got the opportunity to be a stepmom in my life for 3 or 4 years, and it was amazing. But then that didn't last. And when I was at the concert with Missy and For King and Country is talking about Compassion International and what they do. Missy's like, I sponsored a kid. I'm like, what? The fact that you get to have a real relationship with them, like you get to write letters and pictures and you can go visit them, just got me. So I scanned the QR code up there and I said, whoever I'm supposed to have, God, text them to me. So they texted me, Eric. Thanks, Rick. So this is Eric, and he lives in Ecuador. He is 14 years old. He loves soccer. I had the opportunity to buy his family goats last week, which is pretty cool because that's an income source for them. And they draw you pictures. So he sent me a picture with the last letter he wrote, a picture that he drew of Jesus. it's so powerful. And so he speaks Spanish, so they translate it for you. And I'm just so proud to be able to help a community, an entire community in El Salvador, and just know that when you sponsor a child through us, that we're all in it together. So Missy sponsored a child with What's Your Story community. I'm going to do it. Shani was our first packet sponsor. She picked one up. So they're going to know each other. And at some point, I think it will all click that our What's Your Story family has helped out this community together in El Salvador.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to be a part of something so big and yet so caring and loving. And I want to give a shout out to Allie Watson. She is our liaison between Compassion International, and she has been just amazing and a dream to work with through this process. She has a heart for these kids like you wouldn't believe. She sponsors children herself. She's made trips to go see them. Her husband is in Rwanda right now visiting another child that they sponsor. So it's like, you know that it's a real thing. When they tell you you can come and visit your child, you know that your child is actually getting that money every single month. And she told me so Monterey, like I showed before, was my first sponsored child this year. And then I have Lydia, who's our What's Your Story. She's a firecracker. She's 3, and she's Miss Smarty Pants. And then as I was going through our website link for all the kids in El Salvador, this little boy popped up. His name is Jay. That's my dad's name.
Yep.
So I said, oh, okay, that's a sign. So I signed up for Jay, and then it came up with this pop-up. And it said they don't usually recommend siblings. They really want you to sponsor one child in the family. But her name was Wilma. And my great-grandmother's name was Wilhelmina, but we called her Wilma because we couldn't pronounce it. So I thought, what coincidence?
Hello.
I think not. So then of course, I had to sponsor her too. So we have Jay and Wilma, and then Lydia, and then Monterey. And so we're just thrilled. So now, Fred and I have 4 children, and we're pretty excited about it. And Allie said, she goes, pretty soon, she goes, they're going to start calling you, my second mama, which, made me cry, of course. And so I would really encourage you, be a part of our family and sign up to take care of another child and our other family that's in El Salvador. So again, you can text Storyfest to 833-933 or scan the QR code and go and check them out. Do your research and find out about Compassion International.
You can also visit our website, thewhatyourstory.com, and there's a section on there that has a link. Just click sponsor a child and you can get some more information. And obviously you can reach out to Missy or I if you have any questions about it.
All right. Thank you so much.
That is awesome. Thank you, guys. Our next speaker is someone that I'm also very proud of. She was also part of our What's Your Story Academy, so I've watched her grow and her speaking abilities. She's going to share with us a personal story. Samantha D'Amelio is a realtor. She's a mobile notary. She also happens to be a survivor of domestic abuse, and her story surely resonates with so many people out there. And so we're proud of you for being able to share this story and for putting it all together and arriving at this point where you're now on camera and on stages and doing all of these things. So Samantha D'Amelio, thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm going to start with a huge, powerful quote. You're much stronger than I ever was. That is a powerful quote. I didn't realize at the time it was said to me how much it was going to really kind of affect my life and the trajectory of my life. We're going to go back prior to that. When I was growing up, I always knew I was going to get married, hopefully have kids, have a job. And really my childhood was, I call it, I don't want to say boring, but it wasn't that eventful. I did have divorced parents, but my dad and mom actually got along. I didn't have the bickering parents or anything like that. And I had while not a big family, I'm an only child, had extended family, my grandparents, and I always loved the notion of being with somebody and having a husband someday, and talk to my grandparents, their story, each of them. So my mom's parents' story, my grandfather saw my grandmother and he said, I'm going to marry that redhead. She gave him a little pushback, but they didn't end up getting married. And on my dad's side, my grandmother, I remember asking her, how did you meet my grandfather? A little backstory. My grandmother grew up in Missouri. I grew up in central New York. So how would you meet my grandfather? He was in the Army. She saw him at the drugstore like a Woolworth soda counter for those of us that don't have that back in the day. And just, that's how they met. And she moved from Missouri to New York. So I was like, man, this is great. I'm going to have a story like this. I'm not going to be divorced like my parents. And I had just good boyfriends throughout my dating, as I started to date when I was a teenager. Had some decent boyfriends. I, had some issues, like stood up and that, but nothing that would ever lead me to believe that I'm going to be with somebody who would not be good for me. And in my 20s, I had my circle of friends. We would go to Wednesday softballs, and in that same circle of friends was this guy who I started dating. Things were going well. We moved in together. And on my birthday that year, he proposed to me. In a birthday card wrote, will you marry me? And I had it up like this and looked up and said, are you serious? And he had the ring. So of course I said yes. And then the wedding planning began. During that time, we also were looking for a house because, I had my list of things to do. I should have done a list, but my checklist of things I wanted to accomplish in life. So we're planning the wedding. We found a house. The wedding was great. It was a traditional Catholic big wedding, church wedding, reception, all the things. And we moved into our house. Now, prior to getting married, there was never really any red flags or anything. But after we were married, as we're getting settled in the house, I remember on a Sunday, my mom and aunt happened to just stop by. Just on the whim, they happened to be nearby. He got so mad because he was watching football. And mind you, our house back east in Utica, New York, houses have basements. We were lucky that we had a finished basement. It was like a game room. There was like a bar and built-ins, and he was watching it downstairs. He was so mad I had to make an excuse and kind of send my mom and aunt away. And still didn't think much of it because I was like, well, you knew he was a football fan. He has the Dallas Cowboys star tattooed on his arm. And maybe that's a red flag, but we're not going to get into football today. Some people will say that's a red flag. So I just made an excuse, and I did feel bad. It's my mom and my aunt, they were just going to come over and hang out. And I do remember too that winter I ended up super sick with the flu in bed, couldn't get out of bed, felt really weak, and I called him while he was at work, and he was a salesman for a big soda company. What that means is his route was to go to 4 of the local grocery stores and take the orders for the sodas and the Gatorades and stuff. So I called him and said, I'm just not feeling good. Could you pick up some Gatorade on your way home and some ginger ale? And his response was, I don't want to be in the grocery store any longer than I have to be, and didn't. Luckily, my mom, live in the same town, she dropped off everything for me. So again, it was a red flag that I was like, but kind of didn't think too much of it. I didn't know at the time that it's kind of not the way a spouse should act. But, things just went on. And that spring, we talked about and decided on getting a puppy. And we went to the breeder. It was a small town, small breeder, and we picked the puppy, and she says, oh, he's ready to go. And we said, ooh, we don't have anything. Can we come back the next night? So we made arrangements to return on a Wednesday. Remember, I said it was spring. He plays softball. And that morning, Wednesday morning, I said, so don't forget, after work, we're going to go pick up the puppy. And he said, I have softball. And I said, but you agreed yesterday, we were going to go together to pick up the puppy. And he's like, well, I can't miss softball. It was just like a fun thing. It was not a tournament. It wasn't anything like that. So Mom came into the rescue and went with me after work to pick up said puppy. And, I had the puppy at home. He comes home, and this was my first dog. I don't know if anybody has had dogs or the first dog, and you get them as a puppy and realize they cry all night. He was not happy to have left his litter, and his mom and dad dog were on the premises, and we decided we were going to crate him at night because we didn't know puppy, we knew small bladder. And I remember sleeping on the floor in front of the crate, and my then husband comes up to me and says, "Can you stop him crying? I have to work in the morning." And I said, "Well, I work too. It's Wednesday night. I have to go to work tomorrow too." And he's like, "Well, just stop him from crying." And I'm like, I didn't know what to do or say because I thought, it's another red flag. But I was like, I can't. Luckily, within a couple of nights, the puppy settled down. We figured out to put the crate so he could see me as he was sleeping, and he would settle down. I was the one that got to get up at 4 a.m. for the potty breaks, but that's a whole different story. So we have this new puppy, and I remember 4th of July holding this puppy who was maybe 3 months old at the time, and we were out in our backyard. We didn't go watch fireworks because we weren't sure how the dog would react. And I remember sitting on our picnic table, looking up because we could see some of them from our house, and thinking, man, this is just great. Everything is so perfect. Life is perfect. Maybe next year we'll have a baby by this time. And little did I know. I just want to sometimes go back to that woman and say, things are about to change. And they did. A couple of days after, it was the weekend, we had a few friends over, had them over in the afternoon. Everybody stayed for quite a long time. We went through all of our food. I'm Italian. That's kind of embarrassing to admit here on camera, but there was tons of food, but everybody was at our house for a very long time. We went through all the beer that was bought, and some of the guys started drinking our hard liquor. Remember, I said I have a bar downstairs in my basement. And everybody finally left about, I would say maybe 1 a.m. And I'm finishing cleaning up in the kitchen. I turn around and look, and this poor 3-month-old puppy is like exhausted on my kitchen floor. And I thought, you know what, everything's cleaned up. I'm just gonna go to bed. I'm gonna put him in the crate and go to bed. Anything else can be done tomorrow. And I look before I go to bed and realize our overhead garage door is open, and so is the back door to the backyard. So I close both doors and lock them, and I'm wiping down the kitchen sink, and I hear a knock on the window, and my husband says, "Hey, Samantha, I'm outside." I said, oh my God, I'm sorry. So I go over, unlock the door. He came in absolutely crazed. Demanded to know why I would lock my husband out of the house. What was I thinking? What was I doing? And I said, I didn't know you were outside. I thought you were in our basement. And he said something, I don't even remember. I'm sure he screamed a bunch of expletives, hard word, at me, and just stomped off down in the basement. So again, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go to bed. I don't know why he's angry. He has been drinking a lot. I'm just going to go to bed. So I get the puppy situated in his crate. I get into bed, and not even a few moments later, I hadn't fallen asleep yet. I was in that when you're half asleep, half awake mode. You just you get jolted awake. He came in the bedroom, flung the door open. I'm surprised he didn't rip the door off the hinges, is how I remember. It was very violent, and starts screaming at me, gets to the end of the bed and says, "How dare you not help me clean up? You don't do anything around here." Remember I just said I was Italian? Probably, in retrospect, not my best response, but I stand up onto the bed and say, "How dare you say that? I do the grocery shopping, I do most of the cleaning, I do a lot of the cooking, I work, I take care of the puppy because you didn't want to be up at night with him." That was not good to say in this situation because his reaction was to grab me by my wrists, push me back down on the bed, and I remember him being on top of me and thinking, I go into fight or flight mode. How am I going to get this man who is a foot taller than me and probably 70 to 80 pounds more than me off of me? And I do remember his hands going around my neck, and somehow when he shifted his weight, I managed to squeeze out. I grabbed my bathrobe, I grabbed the dog, ran out into our kitchen and called the police. The police showed up, and they got him outside to get his version of what went on and got mine. And I remember, so I told the officer what had happened, and I remember specifically them shining a flashlight and saying, "Well, you do have the red marks consistent for what you're saying happened." And then they said to me something that, and I know I'm smiling, it's not funny, but that's kind of my reaction to stress, that I never thought I would have to have said to me ever in my life, especially about my husband. And they said, "Do you want to press charges?" man, I felt like there was like a good cop, bad cop over here, like little on my shoulder. Like the good cop is like, you're a strong, independent woman. Your parents didn't raise you to be treated like this. You should press charges. But the other side said, but if you press charges, everybody's going to know about this. This is embarrassing. Like, how could you let this happen to you? This shouldn't have happened. Everybody's going to know. What do you do? But what comes out of my mouth is, no, I don't want to press charges. And I could see the officer's face fall and almost like a sigh. Okay, he's not staying here tonight. We're not leaving the two of you in this house because we will be back and somebody's going to end up going to jail. So we decided somehow to call his mom, who came down to pick him up, and I heard her outside because he stayed outside this whole time. And they said, I heard her say, my mother-in-law say to the officer, can I go in to see her? Sure. She comes in the kitchen, wraps me in this big hug, and says, you're much stronger than I ever was. And then leaves. I'm standing in the kitchen like, what did she just say? Did she just say, no, I knew my in-laws got married young. My mother-in-law got pregnant in high school with my husband. So they got married. Remember, I said a Catholic wedding, big Catholic family. That was kind of the route they had to go. And I knew my father-in-law drank a lot, but he was a happy drunk. He would go to bed early. He would laugh. He never gave any indication. So when she said that, I'm standing in my kitchen thinking, did she go through this? Because nobody talked about it. It was just like, oh, your father-in-law just drinks a lot. He just goes to bed. But the next day, I remember I called my mom. My mom did know most of what's going on. And she said, have you talked to him? And I said, well, it's like 8 a.m. in the morning. This happened at 2 a.m. And she said, all right. I said, well, he's going to call me. He's going to call me and apologize. There's the excuses again. He's going to call me and apologize because he's never done that. Why would he do this to his wife? He promised to love me. And noontime comes around, nothing from my husband. My mom calls me again and says, have you talked to him yet? And I remember saying no. And she said, don't you think you should call him? And I said, oh, fine. I wanted him to call me. That was why I was being pessimistic, because I wanted an apology. No, that's not an excuse, but I wanted that apology so bad. And I called, he gets on the phone, and the first things he said to me, you know I could have lost my job if you pressed charges. And I said, okay, I didn't know that, but I didn't press charges. There I am trying to make excuses and diffuse the situation. And he just continued on saying, you looked absolutely crazy standing in the kitchen calling the police in that purple bathrobe holding the dog. I don't even remember if I said anything to that, because what do you say to that? I think I might have said something along the lines of, I didn't know what to do. You scared me when you did that. I did not know what to do. So he came home. I want to say to you all, like, oh, I was great. I left. It was great. I didn't, because we were only married about 8 months. And I was like, the first year of marriage is hard. This is not what they mean when they say the first year of marriage is hard. But I took it as, he drank a real lot. I was making excuses galore. I should have a big checklist of all the excuses I made behind me. I was like, he drank a lot. He doesn't normally drink like that. Again, I don't know why I was making excuses. I just wish I could go back to that girl. However, we stayed married for a while and even decided, hey, let's try for that baby. I don't know where my thought process was at that, other than I knew I wanted to have kids, but really, what happened during the next few months we were married was just me being afraid and petrified. When he would go to softball, I would be nervous because they would have some beer, and who knows what else. When once in a while he would go out to a happy hour with some of the other guys from the other, work in the grocery stores as well, doing the sales. I knew all of them, so it wasn't that. And he would always say, you just don't want me to hang out with people. And I said, I'm thinking to myself, it's not that. I don't want you coming home drunk and having a repeat of what happened. And we made plans that coming Valentine's Day to go to dinner. He calls me at 4 o'clock that day and says, I'm going to go to happy hour. I'll be home for dinner. And I said, well, we're going out to dinner. Yeah, I'm just going to go out with a couple of the guys. And I said, okay, but they're not married or in a relationship. They don't have a Valentine's Day, like plans that I know of. And he's like, it's just one drink. Again, you don't let me do anything. And I was like, okay, fine. It was 8 p.m. before he got home, so obviously we missed our dinner reservation or didn't even have the chance to go to dinner. And remember sitting in our living room, and he comes in, and I said, I'm not. He asked, why are you sitting in the dark? And I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want a divorce. And the second I said that, all the stress lifted off of me. Now, maybe saying that too would have set him off. It didn't. He actually was crying in front of me, tears. And I don't understand where this is coming from. And I said, this isn't working. You can't think this is what it's supposed to be. And he did leave that night, went to his parents. So obviously I did get divorced, lost the house because we had to sell it. I shouldn't say lose it. We had to sell the house as part of the divorce. And I ended up a year later moving out to Las Vegas, Nevada, here, where I am now, and had some dating, had some ups and downs with the dating as well, and was burnt out. And I ended up being fixed up with my current husband after much pushback to my poor friend, who every 2 weeks would say, did you meet him yet? He's nice. He's not like those jerks that you've dated. He is nice. So I finally, begrudgingly, said, fine, I'll go out for a drink with this guy. Mostly to kind of shut her up every time I would see her at work. Sorry if you watch this, but that was my thought process then. And we went out, we had a drink, and I was like, he's cute, he seems nice. Maybe this will work. And a week later, we went on our first date at Brio, which was at the one in Tivoli at the time. And I remember we ended up closing down the restaurant. They were sweeping around us. That's how great the conversation went. And that was 12 years ago. We have been married for 6, and I just remember that statement, you're much stronger than I ever was, because there was times when I did not feel stronger, but in retrospect, I am much stronger than I ever was back then.
Thank you, Samantha, for sharing your story.
Thank you, Samantha. It takes a lot of bravery to be a storyteller and a speaker, to get on stage or to get, in this case, in front of a camera. But it takes courage to go back and relive probably the most traumatic experience you've ever had in your life. And that's what a lot of our speakers have done today, and that's what makes them effective storytellers in my mind.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
Absolutely. Thank you for being brave, Samantha.
Yes, thank you, Samantha.
It honestly doesn't, it gets easier, but not really, because you do relive
Right.
that moment. But I think it's important because so many people do go through something like that and make the excuses. And sometimes they don't end up being able to get out.
Yep. That's why we share our stories.
That's the relatable part, right? That's the part that's going to
Yeah.
connect with
Right.
the audiences. Let's talk a little bit about what's your story, because what's your story? I mean, we had years of trying to define it. It's really a movement, and it has many iterations. And now we're a live streaming, platform as well. But Missy, what's your story now at this point?
So What's Your Story is just the whole deal. Now, last year I had a coach who, shout out to BG and your book Dream Big. So he just said, I'm getting tired of listening to you talk about, What's Your Story's your thing. I want to do What's Your Story and blah, blah, blah. And he said, you know what, this is where we're at. You either go all in or give it up.
Right.
And so when he said give it up, I was like, oh, and I started crying. And I was like, I can't give it up. And he goes, then do something with it. So, and he said, in order to, go all in, you're going to have to give stuff up. And that was scary, to me. But I knew that What's Your Story could be something so much more if I just allowed it to be. And so I gave up corporate training and a lot of my coaching business. And you guys were there. You were in the mastermind when I come in and say, so thinking about starting a speaker academy. What do you think?
I'm just going to throw in too that for you to give up your corporate training, people who don't know you were a corporate trainer to groups like Starbucks and Microsoft and Chick-fil-A. I mean, people dream about having the opportunity to be able to work with these organizations.
Right.
But you felt really this was a calling for you.
Yeah, it was like, this is the time. It was almost kind of like it's an now or never kind of a thing, if you don't make the decision now. And so I did. And so then, we have the Speaker Academy, and I was like, I thought, a couple of people, and we had 9, in our class. And then it's like, well, then what's the next thing? We'll do a speaker bureau. Okay, sure, why not? So, so now we have the What's Your Story Academy, Speaker Academy. I have virtual and in person, where if you want to learn how to be certified storyteller, you would go through the academy. Next step is the speaker bureau. And if any of the speakers you saw today caught your attention, including Gerard and Michelle, and you want to book them for your event, whether it's in your company or an offsite or things like that, you can go to the website, www.thewhatyourstory.com. You can see all the speakers that are in the speaker bureau and book them for your events. I highly recommend any of them that are on the website. And then we're going to have retreats. And then we have Storyfest, which is, today was virtual. That's new. Our next one is October 19th. So block that out in your calendar, and we're going to do another new thing. We're going to take it to a church.
Yep.
We're going to do Storyfest from a church in October.
Amen.
Yes. So, it's like it's time for it just to expand and have a further. Why does that sound so weird? Farther reach than we have now, and I'm excited that there's people out of state that are watching us today. I mean, I think it's exciting. We're getting in front of people that we haven't. My family's watching. They've always wondered, what the heck are you doing up there in Las Vegas? Well, now you know what it is. And I'm just proud of it, and I'm excited, and I finally feel like I'm living my purpose here with What's Your Story, and to be able to do it with all my friends and have my friends support me in it and be a huge part of it. Gerard, this is his 3rd time being an MC at our event, so thank you, Gerard, for doing that.
I love it. Thank
and
you.
for Michelle, who makes everything beautiful with branding and everything, just does a great job and supports me. So thank you for everything you do also.
You're
for
welcome.
What's Your Story. And I would invite you just to go and check out the website if you want to know what we're up to. It's changing all the time. And thank you for tuning in today. And now at this point in time, we're going to invite everybody in because we want to do a big, huge goodbye and thank you to everybody that's all our supporters that are behind the scenes. Emily, for one, who does most of our content and everything, and our sponsors.
Yes.
And the speakers. Oh, there's David Dendy.
Hey, David.
You came back.
I just want to say something
Yeah,
real quick while
come
we're
on.
loading people in here. Is I've been
You can
with
gather
Missy
around the table, too. Just make sure you're in front of a camera.
for about 5-6 years with What's Your Story, and I got to tell you, you were made for this. Like, you were born to do this, and just never give up on passions and dreams, because I think everything you've done until this point, you wouldn't be able to do What's Your Story like you are doing it unless you would have had the journey you did.
Right.
So,
That's true.
amen, sister.
Amen. All right. So everybody, thank you for tuning in today. We love having you join us and being supportive of our very first virtual Storyfest. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next time.